That was when 25-year-old Erica Mae Butts was hyperventilating in court after receiving a life sentence for the death of 3-year-old Serenity Richardson in 2011. Prosecutors said the girl was repeatedly abused inside a South Carolina home, including being struck with a belt several times after wetting herself. When she was finally taken to the hospital, doctors documented extreme bruising and severe injuries across her body, and she later died from the trauma. Serenity had been left in Erica's care while her mother was trying to relocate. Another woman living in the home, Shanita Latrice Cunningham, was also charged in the case. Both women entered guilty pleas to homicide by child abuse and were sentenced to life in prison. They responded by collapsing in the courtroom, making a scene and crying hysterically before being dragged out. Morbid facts. 2006, comedian Bill Maher sparked backlash after attending a Halloween party dressed as Steve Irwin, wearing a khaki outfit with a fake stingray barbed through his chest just weeks after Irwin's real-life death. Irwin had died that September while filming a documentary when a stingray's barb pierced his heart, making the costume feel especially raw to fans and the public. Maher later defended it as dark humor, arguing that risk comes with working around wild animals, but critics called it disrespectful and too soon, turning the outfit into one of the most controversial celebrity costumes of the era. A 49-year-old man in Romania caused a devastating accident in 2016 while cutting firewood with a neighbor after the two had reportedly been drinking together. Authorities said he mishandled a running chainsaw during what witnesses described as joking around, striking the 53-year-old victim directly in the groin. The man was rushed into emergency surgery with catastrophic injuries, but doctors were unable to save his floppy Johnson. Investigators treated the incident as a reckless accident rather than an intentional attack, a grim reminder of how alcohol and dangerous objects can quickly turn a fun night into a life-altering tragedy. Morbid facts. Justin Roiland, the original voice of Rick and Morty, saw his career collapse after a wave of disturbing allegations. In 2020, he was charged with felony domestic battery and false imprisonment. And though the case was dismissed in 2023 for a lack of evidence, Adult Swim, Hulu, and his own gaming studio had already severed ties. That same year, new accusations surfaced of sexual assault, inappropriate contact with underage girls, and toxic workplace behavior, including lewd messages to colleagues. Once the celebrated co-creator of Rick and Morty, Roiland's reputation is now defined by scandal, and with seasons 7 and 8 already recast, the show has clearly moved on without him, with no indication that he'll ever return. In 2010, 4-year-old Paulette Habara Farah mysteriously vanished from her home in Mexico. For 9 days, authorities and her family searched everywhere, her case dominating headlines across the country. But the shocking discovery came right in her own bedroom, where she was found dead, wedged between the mattress and bed frame in a spot where investigators supposedly checked. Even more disturbing, her own mother had slept in that bed during the search without realizing Paulette's body was beneath her. Officials ruled it an accident, but countless inconsistencies fueled suspicions of foul play, turning her death into one of Mexico's most disturbing and controversial cases. This was the moment TikToker Hannah Viverette was filming a dance video inside her second-floor apartment in Hagerstown, Maryland, when a man suddenly climbed onto her balcony and entered through the door. Hannah later said she recognized him as someone she'd seen watching her from a truck outside her building on multiple occasions. She also said she was terrified because the man kept his hands in his hoodie, making her fear he was holding a weapon. She acted correctly by running into the hallway and yelling loudly to draw attention, which luckily appeared to scare the intruder off. A neighbor then led her inside their apartment where she was able to call police. Police identified the suspect as 36-year-old Angel Moises Rodriguez Gomez, who was charged with burglary and stalking. He was later released on bond and taken into ICE custody.
Well, this is my last video. It all has to come to this. Tomorrow is the day of retribution. The day in which I will have my revenge against humanity, against all of you.
That was the final video recorded by 22-year-old Santa Barbara College student Elliot Rodger just one day before he carried out a mass killing in Isla Vista, California. On May 23, 2014, the incel began what he called his day of retribution after years of documenting his anger toward women and sexually active men who he constantly blamed for his loneliness and rejection. In the weeks before the attack, he stockpiled firearms, ammunition, and knives and prepared a 137-page manifesto titled My Twisted World, outlining his grievances and violent intentions.
I don't know why you girls are so repulsed by me. It doesn't make sense. I'm sophisticated. I'm magnificent. I'm the ultimate gentleman. These sunglasses here were $300. Giorgio Armani. So I'll put them on. See?
On the day of the attack, he first stabbed 3 male roommates to death inside his apartment, locking their bodies behind a door to delay discovery. Elliot then drove to a nearby sorority house intending to kill women but was unable to gain entry. Instead, he shot and killed 2 women outside before continuing through Isla Vista, shooting at random pedestrians and vehicles. After a brief shootout with police, Elliot crashed his car and was found dead inside from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. 6 people were killed and 14 others were injured. Authorities later confirmed Elliot had been reported to police weeks earlier for disturbing behavior, but no weapons were confiscated. His recorded videos and manifesto continue to circulate online more than a decade after the senseless killings. Morbid facts. This is Kalpana, a 13-year-old domestic worker in Bangladesh who was rescued after enduring unthinkable abuse at the hands of her employers. For months, she was beaten, burned, and even had several teeth forcibly pulled out, leaving her body covered in scars. Her case only came to light when a doctor noticed her injuries and contacted a journalist, who then notified police. The first photo shows her immediately after being rescued, still traumatized and scarred, while the second captures her later in recovery upon finding her smile again. In 2023, 38-year-old Christina Murray from Savannah, Georgia underwent IVF hoping to finally become a mother, only to face one of the most devastating mix-ups in IVF history. After giving birth in December, she was stunned when her newborn son's features didn't match the white sperm donor she had chosen. A DNA test later revealed the unthinkable. The embryo wasn't hers at all. For 5 months, she breastfed, nurtured, and bonded with the baby until a court ruled she had to surrender him to his biological parents. Now separated from the child she carried and cared for, Murray is suing the clinic responsible, describing the ordeal as a nightmare that robbed her both of her dream of motherhood and the son she thought was hers. Morbid facts. In October of 2003, a Las Vegas audience watched in horror as Roy Horn of the famed duo Siegfried and Roy was mauled on stage by his own 600-pound white tiger, Manticore. What began as a dazzling birthday performance suddenly turned grim when the animal clamped its jaws around Roy's neck and dragged him off stage, crushing his windpipe and leaving him moments from death. He miraculously survived, but the attack left him partially paralyzed, ending the duo's legendary Vegas run after more than a decade at the Mirage. Roy later claimed he had felt faint during the act and that the tiger was simply trying to protect him, but many believe it was a brutal reminder that even a lifetime of training can't tame a predator's instincts. Singer and model Taylor Moll lives with one of the rarest genetic conditions on Earth, chimerism. While still in the womb, she absorbed her fraternal twin, and today her body carries 2 sets of DNA, her own and that of her lost sibling. The most striking evidence runs straight down her torso, where a sharp line divides 2 different skin tones, one coded by her DNA, the other by her twins. Doctors say she effectively lives with 2 immune systems, making her more prone to health insensitivities and turning her body into a living reminder of the sibling who never survived. Extra morbid fact, 2012, 14-year-old Cassidy Goodson from Florida was hiding a dark secret that would only come to light in the most horrifying way. After secretly giving birth in her bathroom, she used a pair of scissors to cut the cord, then strangled the newborn to death and hid his body inside a shoebox. Days later, her mother noticed a foul odor coming from Cassidy's room, opened the box, and made the shocking discovery before calling police. As a juvenile, Cassidy pleaded guilty to manslaughter, receiving just 18 months in detention and probation for a life she tried so desperately to erase. In 2011, police in South Korea discovered the body of a 58-year-old man inside an abandoned quarry in a scene that looked eerily like a crucifixion. He was found on a wooden cross wearing a crown of thorns and flanked by two smaller crosses with tools, written plans, and a tent nearby. After investigators reconstructed the event, they concluded that it was a carefully staged act he had carried out himself, and the death was officially ruled a suicide as the man had apparently crucified himself. She waited 63 years for the love of her life to return home. In 1950, U.S. Army Sergeant Joseph Gant went missing during the Korean War, and his wife Clara was told only that he may have been taken prisoner. Refusing to give up hope, she never remarried and kept a light burning on her porch for more than 6 decades, telling everyone she was still waiting for Joe. Finally, in 2013, his remains were identified and returned to Los Angeles in a flag-draped coffin. At 94 years old, Clara stood weeping as she welcomed him home, her lifelong vigil ending in both heartbreak and closure. This was the last photo taken of 31-year-old Landre Sylvester in July of 2021, as he walked out of Cook County Jail after posting bail, unaware it would be his final steps. Just minutes after his release, multiple gunmen leaped from 2 cars and opened fire in a calculated ambush, riddling his body with up to 64 bullets in front of stunned witnesses. Police noted Sylvester's ties to local gangs, and many believe the hit was gang-related retaliation, but with no arrests ever made, the case remains officially unsolved.
I'm getting you on tape, okay? Say hi, please. Okay, see ya.
In 2006, 16-year-old Idaho student Cassie Jo Stoddart was brutally murdered by her 2 classmates, Brian Draper and Tori Adamczyk, who were obsessed with the movie Scream and wanted to document the slaying of their friend.
We're going to make history. We're gonna make history. We found our victim, and sad as it may be, she's our friend. But you know what? We all have to make sacrifices.
That night, Cassie was house-sitting for her aunt, and her boyfriend invited the boys over since they were all friends, unaware that they were plotting her death. While pretending to hang out, Draper quietly unlocked the basement door before they left. When Cassie's boyfriend had to leave hours later, the pair returned in masks, cut the power, and slammed doors to terrify her before sneaking upstairs. Cassie fought desperately, but the boys stabbed her over 30 times, leaving her to die alone in the pitch-black darkness.
Just killed Cassie. We just left her house. This is not a fucking joke. I stabbed her in the throat, and I saw her lifeless body just disappear. Dude, I just killed Cassie.
Both were sentenced to life in prison, though Adamczyk continues to insist he's innocent, and his mother still believes him despite the chilling videotapes that helped seal their fate. Morbid facts. This was the final photo taken of newlyweds Samantha Miller and Eric Hutchinson as they left their Folly Beach wedding in April of 2023. Moments later, their golf cart was struck by drunk driver Jamie Komorowski, who was going nearly 3 times the speed limit. Samantha, still in her wedding dress, was killed instantly, while Eric survived with devastating injuries. The following year, Eric reached an $863,000 settlement with the bars that overserved the driver, while Komorowski was sentenced to 25 years in prison for causing the awful incident. In 1981, 6-year-old Adam Walsh vanished from a Sears in Hollywood, Florida, and 2 weeks later his severed head was discovered in a canal while the rest of his body was never found. The gruesome case went unsolved for decades until police officially named drifter and serial killer Otis Toole as the murderer in 2006, though he had already died in prison. Adam's father, John Walsh, later turned the tragedy into a movement for child protection, co-founding the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and later launching America's Most Wanted, which has helped bring hundreds of cases to justice over the years. Extra morbid facts. In 1992, 16-year-old Suzanne Capper was lured to a house in Manchester by people she thought were her friends. But for nearly a week, they tortured and humiliated her, breaking her arm, pulling out her teeth, shaving her head, and scrubbing her skin off with a wire brush before forcing her into a bathtub of disinfectant. They blasted tapes of the movie Child's Play to torment her, then drove her to a field, doused her in gasoline, and set her on fire. Suzanne survived for long enough to name her attackers before dying in the hospital 4 days later. 6 people were convicted for the heinous crimes. 4 received life sentences, including 2 women who were just 17 and 18 at the time, while the 2 remaining men were given lengthy prison terms. Morbid facts. In October of 2015, 21-year-old Dutch medical student Sophia Koetsier vanished while on a Ugandan safari after stepping away for a bathroom break just a short distance from her lodge. About 3 weeks after she disappeared, searchers found her belongings in eerie condition. Her purse and 1 shoe neatly placed on the ground, while the other shoe was never recovered, scraps of her fabric tied to branches like trail markers, and her underwear bizarrely hanging 15 feet high in a tree. No blood, remains, or sign of a struggle were ever found, as authorities quickly wrote it off as a wild animal attack, though experts noted that predators don't hang underwear in trees or arrange items so deliberately. Her mother has spent years fighting the official explanation, describing how it felt like the earth had simply swallowed her up, since not even a single fragment of a bone has ever been recovered. Nearly a decade later, Sophia's disappearance remains one of Africa's most haunting safari mysteries. Morbid facts. Danny Masterson, best known for playing Stephen Hyde on That 70s Show, lived a double life that ended in one of Hollywood's darkest scandals. In 2023, he was convicted of raping 2 women in the early 2000s, crimes he had long denied while reportedly using his fame and influence in the Church of Scientology to silence his victims. The women testified that the church pressured them not to report him and even tried to discredit them when they did. Masterson was ultimately sentenced to 30 years to life in prison, a staggering downfall for a sitcom star once seen as a laid-back cultural icon. In 2025, 6-year-old Gunnar Hyatt of Mount Carmel, Illinois, died just days after his birthday when he suffocated from inhaling helium out of a Mylar balloon. Investigators say the cause was consistent with helium inhalation, a danger many parents don't realize can kill within minutes by displacing oxygen and cutting off blood flow to the brain. The Wabash County coroner used the tragedy to warn that oversized helium balloons, often seen as harmless party decorations, can become deadly when inhaled, a reminder of how quickly something festive can turn fatal. The crimes of Gary Heidnik were so horrific they inspired the character Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs. In 1986, Gary turned his Philadelphia home into a dungeon of unspeakable horrors. He abducted 6 women, chaining them in his basement pit where they endured beatings, sexual assault, starvation, and even being forced to torture each other. 2 women were killed during the ordeal, and in one of the most grotesque acts, Heidnik dismembered a victim, ground up parts of her body, and fed it to the other prisoners. While he carried out these atrocities below ground, he held church services upstairs as if nothing were wrong. Heidnik's twisted plan, according to his lawyer, was to impregnate multiple women in hopes of creating what he called a perfect race. His crimes came to light in 1987 when one captive escaped and alerted police. Heidnik was sentenced to death and executed by lethal injection in 1999, becoming the last person ever put to death in the state of Pennsylvania. Morbid facts. While filming the season 4 It's Always Sunny episode, The Gang Solves the Gas Crisis, Caitlin Olsen was accidentally waterboarded by Danny DeVito for real. The crew thought a piece of wetsuit material over her face would protect her, but water still seeped through, leaving her genuinely choking and gasping for air in a true torture simulation. To make matters worse, Olsen had just recently broken her back after being dropped onto concrete during a 4th of July accident, and she filmed the scene strapped to a board with her weight pressing against the healing injury. She now calls it one of the 3 worst days of her life. At a restaurant in California, a 2-year-old was accidentally served cooking wine that was mislabeled as apple juice. Moments later, she began staggering, slurring her words, and even fell over, until a blood test revealed a 0.12% BAC, well over the legal limit to drive. In 2023, repeat offender Thomas Allen McCartney was captured after assaulting a 7-year-old in Louisiana. Under a new state law, he accepted a plea deal of 40 years in prison plus surgical and chemical castration, making him one of the first Americans subjected to court-ordered sterilization. This may look like a wholesome family Christmas video, but the truth is actually horrific. In December of 1990, escaped convicts Von Lester Taylor and Edward Deli were on the run in Utah when they stumbled upon the remote mountain cabin of the Teed family just before Christmas. While inside, they used the family's camcorder to record themselves opening presents and playing with their belongings, laughing as if it were their own celebration.
I don't know. How am I supposed to find out?
But when the Teed family suddenly returned home, all hell broke loose. Mother Kay and grandmother Beth Potts were both shot dead, while Father Rolfe was shot in the head, doused with gasoline, and left to die inside the burning cabin. But incredibly, he managed to crawl to a snowmobile and escape through the snow to get help. Taylor and Deli then kidnapped the two daughters, triggering a high-speed chase and a shootout, during which the girls managed to escape unharmed. Taylor was sentenced to death, while Deli received life in prison without parole. 28-year-old Malaysian woman went viral after pregnancy caused her to develop such severe acne and facial swelling that she appeared to age decades overnight. Hormonal surges left her skin red, inflamed, and scarred to the point of being nearly unrecognizable. While most women only develop mild breakouts or dark patches during pregnancy, her extreme case showed how brutally the body can sometimes react to carrying a child. Dumping ashes at Disney parks is so common that staff have secret code words like white powder alert or code grandma, prompting custodial crews to vacuum up the human remains using HEPA filters. Holy Land USA in Waterbury, Connecticut was once a popular religious theme park that drew thousands of families until its closure in the 1980s, after which it fell into decay. In July of 2010, the abandoned site became the setting for tragedy when 16-year-old Chloe Ottman was strangled to death right underneath the park's giant cross by 19-year-old Francisco Cruz after rejecting his sexual advances. Cruz hid her body on the property, later confessed, and was sentenced to 55 years in prison, forever tying the park's crumbling ruins to one of Connecticut's darkest crimes. Wendell Middlebrooks, the actor who played Kirby on The Suite Life on Deck, died suddenly at the young age of 36 when a pulmonary embolism tore through his lungs. He was found unconscious and alone in his Los Angeles home, likely collapsing in seconds as the blood clot blocked his oxygen, leaving him with no chance to call for help. Fans remembered him as the goofy security guard and the straight-faced Miller High Life guy, making it all the more tragic that such a wholesome presence was suddenly struck down by a silent killer lurking in his bloodstream. Some people known as bug chasers deliberately try to infect themselves with STDs, most notoriously HIV. Emerging in the late 90s, the subculture revolved around men seeking unprotected intercourse with HIV-positive gift givers. For some, the virus was fetishized as a form of erotic gift, while for others it was seen as inevitable, something to get over with instead of living in fear of. Some even viewed HIV as a mark of belonging to a special community. Interviews revealed participants craving the taboo of a slow, deadly virus invading their body, an act of self-destruction that got them aroused. In 2018, 41-year-old British traveler Amanda Gill died from diabetes complications while visiting Mexico. But when her body was flown back to the UK, her family made a horrific discovery. Her eyes, brain, heart, and other organs were missing, with only part of her lower bowel left intact. It's believed that police or hospital staff sold her organs to traffickers. This tragic gravestone from 1875 reads, Kate McCormick, seduced and pregnant by her father's friend. Unwed, she died from abortion, her only choice. Abandoned in life and death by family, with but a single rose from her mother. Buried only through the kindness of an unknown benefactor. Died February 1875, age 21. Victim of an unforgiving society. Have mercy on us. A 44-year-old man lived nearly a decade with a knife blade buried deep in his chest without even realizing it. He felt no pain, had no breathing problems, and seemed perfectly healthy, until strange pus suddenly began oozing from beneath his nipple. Doctors finally ran scans and discovered the blade had been lodged inside his body for 8 years since a stabbing, quietly encased inside of him. Doctors removed the rusted metal in a dramatic surgery, and he walked out of the hospital just 10 days later. Doctors were baffled when a teenage leukemia patient kept developing life-threatening infections until they discovered the boy's mom was doing something horrific to tamper with his treatments. In 2016, Indiana woman Tiffany Alberts was caught secretly injecting feces into her son's IV, causing him to develop severe bloodstream infections that left him feverish, vomiting, and near death. His chemo had to be stopped for nearly 2 months, and the disturbing act ultimately earned Tiffany a 7-year prison sentence. She later claimed she did this in hopes of getting him moved to a different hospital floor where she believed he'd receive better care. In 2015, Berlina Wallace laughed as she threw acid on her ex-boyfriend while he slept, telling him, "If I can't have you, no one can." The attack left him with horrific injuries, burns, blindness in one eye, paralysis, and the loss of a leg. After nearly 2 years in agony, he was euthanized in Belgium in 2017. Wallace was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 12 years. In April of 2025, 44-year-old Felix Rojas boarded a late-night New York City subway and spotted 44-year-old Jorge Gonzalez slumped dead in his seat, believed to have collapsed from natural causes. But instead of calling for help, Rojas did the unthinkable. He first rummaged through the man's pockets for valuables, then dragged his lifeless body to the floor, pulled down the man's pants, and assaulted him. Surveillance showed him pausing the assault each time the train reached a station, only to resume once the doors closed, carefully timing his abuse to avoid being caught. Weeks later, police identified Rojas from the footage and he surrendered, accused of one of the most grotesque crimes ever caught on a New York City subway. Shane Dawson, once YouTube's golden boy, has lived a life shaped by trauma. His father was an alcoholic who abandoned his family, while his mother struggled with hoarding and poverty. As a child, Shane was morbidly obese, bullied relentlessly at school, and has admitted to severe depression and suicidal thoughts before YouTube gave him an outlet. After finding fame online through comedy and conspiratorial content, he later became infamous for disturbing jokes that eventually led to his downfall. One of the most infamous scandals came from a resurfaced podcast bit where Shane claimed he had once done things to his cat as a teen, though he later insisted it was a stupid joke and not real. The image of him as a cat abuser haunted his persona. Years later, an old clip of him pretending to touch himself to an 11-year-old Willow Smith poster resurfaced, prompting outrage from the Smith family and leading YouTube to demonetize his channels. Today, Dawson is seen as more of a ghost of YouTube, overshadowed by the scandals that tainted his career. In 2023, longtime MrBeast co-star Chris Tyson realized he was actually a woman and started hormone therapy, a move that coincided with the collapse of his marriage and leaving behind his young son and wife. Just a year later, Tyson's life spiraled further when allegations surfaced that he had exchanged inappropriate messages with someone as young as 13, accusations that spread across the internet like wildfire. He stepped away from the MrBeast brand, apologized publicly, and stepped away from social media as headlines branded him as a predator. MrBeast himself also distanced from his former friend and launched an independent investigation. By late 2024, a law firm concluded the claims were baseless, but Tyson's reputation was already destroyed. He's now remembered much less for a decade of YouTube success with MrBeast, and more for transition controversy, family upheaval, and a fake scandal that essentially ended his career. As of now, there's no confirmed word that Chris Tyson will be rejoining MrBeast anytime soon. Extra Morbid Facts, Part 8. In 2018, Tyrone Johnson snapped during a fight with his girlfriend Stephanie Willis after she allegedly mocked him over his son's suicide. He shot her in the bedroom, then hunted down her 10-year-old son Ricky, who was hiding under his bed. The boy's room became a scene of horror, with toys scattered, shell casings on the floor, and blood pooling from beneath his bed. In 2022, Johnson was sentenced to death for the killings. In October of 2024, a 67-year-old man from Arkansas was awaiting trial for disgusting crimes against a 14-year-old girl. Despite a no-contact order, he allegedly continued to pursue her, and one night the girl's father discovered her inside a vehicle with him. In the heat of that confrontation, the father pulled out a gun and fatally shot the predator right in front of his daughter. He's since been charged with first-degree murder. Morbid Facts, Part 709. YouTuber Benjamin Bennett built a cult following with his Eerie project Sitting and Smiling. Hundreds of 4-hour videos where he sits cross-legged, staring at the camera with a fixed grin, never moving or speaking. What starts as harmless quickly turns unsettling, the smile morphing into something more of a mask. His commitment over the years has produced some rather disturbing moments. In one recording, someone apparently tries to break into his home, but Bennett continues to grin without moving, sending the intruder fleeing in fear. In another, he loses control of his bladder midstream but still doesn't break character, letting the accident happen as though it were irrelevant to the ritual. In perhaps the most disturbing case, he allegedly kept filming while his grandmother lay dying in the next room, the fixed smile never faltering even as tragedy was unfolding in his own home. He's never once broken character or explained why he does this, leaving behind thousands of hours of unsettling footage that's disturbed viewers online for years. May of 2021, 6-year-old Aiden Leos was riding to kindergarten in his booster seat on a California freeway when his mom flipped off a driver who cut her off. Moments later, the passenger pulled out a gun and fired through their trunk, striking Aiden in the back. His final words were, "Mommy, my tummy hurts," before he collapsed bleeding in his mother's arms. He died minutes later, while the shooter, Marcus Aris, was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. A gambling man from Pakistan was so desperate when he ran out of money to wager, so in a twisted move, he put his own wife on the line. When he lost, the winner claimed his prize by raping her, even recording the assault to blackmail her into silence. 2021, Miss Zhang from Weifang, China, underwent a routine double eyelid cosmetic procedure, but during the operation, she felt extremely uncomfortable in her left eye, only to later discover that her eyeball had been accidentally sewn to the outer corner of her eyelid. Despite stitch removal, a thin thread-like tether still remained between her eyeball and eyelid. Attempts to surgically detach them failed, causing her eye to become inflamed and fused once again. She's now left with blurred vision and severely limited eye movement, able to move her eye only by turning her entire head. In December of 24, 46-year-old Nurhawati Zahora was ambushed by a 13-foot crocodile while washing her feet in murky Indonesian waters. The reptile quickly dragged her under in a brutal death roll, spilling her blood into the water as horrified villagers could only watch. Nearly an hour later, it resurfaced with her lifeless body clamped in its jaws, forcing locals to toss raw chickens into the water to distract it before they could recover her remains. Witnesses described the scene as worse than hell, and authorities later hunted down and shot the crocodile. John Jessup, a once respected politician in Indiana, did the unspeakable to his own daughter while celebrating her 21st birthday in Las Vegas. The former Hancock County Commissioner pleaded guilty to attempted sexual assault after allegedly getting his daughter extremely drunk before assaulting her back at their hotel. Prosecutors say Jessup provided her with multiple Long Island iced teas, took her to a strip club where she became so incapacitated she needed a wheelchair ride back to the hotel, and later assaulted her while she was unconscious. He was sentenced in 2025 to 6 to 25 years in prison, must register as a sex offender, and is barred from all contact with his daughter for life. On Thanksgiving Day in 1980, Priscilla Ford steered her Lincoln Continental onto a crowded Reno sidewalk, mowing down dozens of pedestrians because she claimed a voice in her head told her to, killing 6 people and injuring 23 more in the chaos. Later diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, she showed no remorse in court, and though initially sentenced to death, her punishment was reduced to life in prison. Ford spent the next 25 years behind bars before dying there in 2005. In 2019, an obese, wheelchair-bound American passenger on an EVA air flight from Los Angeles to Taiwan totally humiliated the crew by demanding help in the restroom, then forcing a female flight attendant to wipe him after absolutely nuking the toilet. With the door open, he allegedly moaned in pleasure and urged her on, saying, "Deeper, deeper," while she carried out the degrading task. The incident sparked outrage in Taiwan, led to a fine against EVA Air for failing to protect its staff, and left the attendant in tears as she described the ordeal at a press conference. In 2018, a woman who'd been in a vegetative state for 14 years at Hacienda Healthcare gave birth unexpectedly, as staff had no idea she was even pregnant. DNA evidence later revealed she'd been raped by a nurse over several years. The nurse, Nathan Sutherland, pled guilty to sexual assault and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. The case led to widespread reforms in how care facilities protect vulnerable patients. In April of 2024, 10-year-old Dakota Levi Stevens of Indiana died when his 340-pound foster mother, Jennifer Lee Wilson, pinned him to the floor with her whole body weight for 5 minutes as discipline. As Dakota screamed while gasping for air, she accused him of faking until he went limp, only then attempting CPR. Wilson was sentenced to 6 years in prison for reckless homicide, while it later emerged that Dakota had begged his neighbor to adopt him, saying his foster parents were abusive. In July of 2024, Carol Hunt, the wife of BBC racing commentator John Hunt, and their 2 daughters Louise and Hannah were brutally killed inside their own home in England by Louise's ex-boyfriend Kyle Clifford. Armed with a butcher knife and a crossbow, Clifford first stabbed 61 Carol to death at the front door, then waited for Louise, whom he restrained, raped, and held captive for over 2 hours before killing her with the crossbow. Minutes later, Hannah arrived home only to be shot as well. Fatally wounded, she still managed to raise the alarm before collapsing in the doorway. Clifford then fled and turned the bow on himself, surviving but left paralyzed. In 2025, he was sentenced to life in prison after being found guilty of the murders and rape. The crime devastated the remaining Hunt family. John and his daughter Amy were left to grieve 3 women described as kind, joyful, and compassionate, while Clifford, once welcomed into their lives, exposed himself as nothing more than a violent predator. Grant Amato, a former nurse from Florida, was sentenced to life in prison in 2019 after murdering his parents and brother when they confronted him about stealing $200,000 of their money to fund his obsession with a Bulgarian cam girl. But even behind bars, his name resurfaced in a twisted new plot. In 2024, Victoria Goodwin, the wife of Ghost Adventures star Aaron Goodwin, fell in love with Amato after watching a documentary about his crimes and began messaging him from prison. But their conversations turned deadly when she confessed that she didn't want a divorce, but instead wanted her husband killed, pooling over $11,000 with Amato to hire a hitman and even sending him details of her husband's routine. The plot collapsed when prison officials intercepted Amato's phone, exposing the conspiracy and leading to Victoria's arrest in March of 2025. In court, Aaron Goodwin faced his wife who tried to have him assassinated, while Victoria, strangely enamored with a family-annihilating simp, was sentenced to several years in prison. 26-year-old streamer Natalie Reynolds became widely hated across the internet after convincing a homeless woman to jump into Austin's Lady Bird Lake despite knowing she couldn't swim.
There's a scanner that you need to look for in the water.
Really?
Yeah.
What if I drown?
Then
I haven't been in the water. What is
you
that?
said you want to jump in.
I do kind of want to jump in. Huh? Oh,
And I'm scuba.
jump in with my sandals
I'm
on.
scuba certified. You should jump in.
All right.
When the woman started screaming for help and nearly drowned, Reynolds laughed and fled the scene instead of helping and never called 911.
She says she's drowning. We leave.
Oh, this is bad.
Dude, Natalie. Dude, I'm sorry. I didn't know. She said she's drowning. She says she's drowning.
I think you literally just murdered a lady.
No, I didn't. I swear. No, I didn't. Let's go. Dude, she's drowning in the lake.
Firefighters had to dive in and pull the woman from the water as she thrashed and sank, just moments away from dying right in front of them. Reynolds later denied encouraging the jump, dismissed the backlash as overblown, and arrogantly told her followers it would blow over within a week, while even joking about getting clout from the drama on a private stream. The internet erupted with fury, calling her a heartless, fame-hungry sociopath who treats suffering as entertainment, cementing her reputation as one of the most despised streamers online. China's developing a humanoid robot that can carry a fetus in an artificial womb, where the baby would float in synthetic fluids sustained by nutrient tubes and monitored by sensors before being expelled by hydraulics at birth. The first prototype is planned for 2026, priced around $14,000, and will give people the chance to have children without enduring the risks or pain of pregnancy. Supporters argue it could help women who can't safely carry babies, but critics warn it strips away the human bond of gestation and could mark the beginning of childbirth being outsourced to machines. In 1988, Clarence Moses L. was sentenced to 48 years in prison after a rape victim told police that she saw his face in a dream and decided that he was the attacker. No physical evidence tied him to the crime, and police even destroyed the DNA that could have proven his innocence. For nearly 3 decades, he sat behind bars while the real rapist walked free until that man finally confessed. But by then, Clarence had already lost 28 years of his life to a conviction built on nothing more than a dream. In 2005, 8-year-old Shasta Groen survived one of the most disturbing child abduction cases in U.S. history. A convicted predator invaded her family's rural Idaho home, killing her mother, older brother, and her mother's boyfriend before kidnapping Shasta and her 9-year-old brother Dylan. For nearly 7 weeks, the children were held in the Montana wilderness, where Shasta endured unimaginable abuse and was forced to witness Dylan's murder. She was finally rescued when staff at Denny's recognized her from missing child alerts and contacted police, leading to her captor's arrest. While the man responsible eventually died in prison, he left behind some chilling words, claiming that Shasta had taught him how to love, a grotesque attempt to justify his heinous crimes. The trauma he inflicted left Shasta struggling for years with grief, addiction, and survivor's guilt, and as a young adult, she cycled in and out of jail on charges related to substance abuse and theft. In recent years, she's fought to reclaim her life, becoming a mother and speaking out about the ordeal, but fresh tragedies continue to haunt her, most recently losing her home and treasured family keepsakes in a fire, perpetuating her ongoing battle against the shadows of her past. On Thanksgiving Day in 2022, a heartbreaking tragedy unfolded at the Albuquerque home of Carlin and Connie DeNeo. Carlin, a gentle and soft-spoken man who by all accounts would never hurt a fly, had been battling frontotemporal dementia, a degenerative brain disease that slowly erodes a person's sense of reality and control. In the weeks leading up to the incident, he'd been waking up in the middle of the night in a state of deep anxiety and confusion, often unable to recognize where he was or what was happening. On that devastating holiday morning, family members arrived to find Connie's body dismembered and Carlin severely injured from self-inflicted wounds. Though he admitted to the murder, it was painfully clear that he wasn't in his right mind, lost in the fog of a cruel illness that had taken over his thoughts and stripped him of reason. Friends and loved ones were left shattered, knowing this wasn't the man they knew, but the heartbreaking consequence of a disease that claimed them both. Carlin was taken into custody and charged with murder, but his health rapidly declined. Just 3 weeks later, he died in medical care, his final days spent in confusion, grief, and the fading remnants of a once peaceful life. In 2009, 25-year-old Matrice Richardson was arrested by Malibu police after failing to pay a dinner bill, then released just after midnight without her phone, wallet, or car. She then wandered into the mountains alone, reportedly in a state of mental distress. 11 months later, her skeletal remains were found in a canyon, her body bizarrely mummified in some areas but missing internal organs, and her clothes were scattered far from her body. Authorities insisted there was no foul play, but the condition of her remains and the decision to release her into the night remained deeply controversial. Rising French child actor and voice dubber Boris Roata was best known as the French voice of Kevin McAllister in Home Alone. But in August of 1994, at just 14 years old, he was struck by a car while cycling in the French Alps and killed instantly, cutting short a promising career that had only just begun. In 1901, outlaw Thomas Blackjack Ketchum was hanged in Clayton, New Mexico, the town's first ever execution. But with no prior experience, they miscalculated the rope length. When the trapdoor dropped, the force was so strong that it ripped his head clean off. His headless body dropped to the ground, and locals, rather unfazed, posed for postcards with the corpse, later turning the images into macabre souvenir postcards. Carlos Happy Rodriguez was ejected through a windshield in a drug-fueled crash as a teenager, smashing his skull so badly that surgeons had to remove the entire upper half of it, leaving his brain covered only by skin. Incredibly, he survived without any severe cognitive damage, but went on to rack up arrests for drugs, arson, and other crimes, his caved-in head becoming one of the internet's most infamous mugshots. Here's a photo of tobacco company CEOs declaring under oath that nicotine is not addictive. The moment became infamous when internal documents later revealed that tobacco executives had known for decades about nicotine's highly addictive properties and had even manipulated nicotine levels in cigarettes to enhance dependency. In 18th century Europe, the wealthy often devoured sugar with no real dental care, rotting their teeth into black stumps that often fell out. To keep up appearances, they wore dentures, not wooden as legend claims, but often filled with real human teeth. These were bought from the poor, pulled from slaves or prisoners, or scavenged from battlefields, sometimes still bloody from fallen soldiers. With no concept of sterilization, they could carry infections, even syphilis, into the wearer's mouth. In advanced cases, the disease could slowly eat away at the face, collapsing the nose and leaving a grotesque hollow mask where features used to be. Jeremy Renner's 15,000-pound snowplow crushed his body with such force that he later recalled hearing the crunching of his own bones. The actor sustained 38 broken bones, a collapsed lung, severe cranial trauma, and required extensive reconstruction with metal plates to his chest, legs, and face. Among the most horrifying details he later revealed was that the impact had dislodged his left eyeball so severely that he could see it sticking out of his head with his right eye. A poor spider that was posthumously named Lawrence got stuck in this glass and couldn't climb up the smooth surface, so it apparently tried to web its way to the top until its silk ran out and it eventually perished. In 2003, 28-year-old British marine biologist Kirsty Brown was snorkeling off the coast of Antarctica when a massive leopard seal lunged from below, clamping onto her head. The powerful predator dragged her deep underwater, then repeatedly surged up and down through the water column in a torturous manner, shaking her violently before releasing her lifeless body. It was the first recorded fatal leopard seal attack on a human. Photographer Sam Davis captured the incredible moment a snake eel burst out from a heron's stomach while the bird was still flying, having chewed its way through the heron's throat using its pointed tail. Both animals were likely fatally injured. In February of 2021, a 45-year-old man named Thangula Satish died in India after his rooster, armed with a 3-inch blade for an illegal cockfight, slashed his groin as it tried to escape, severing a major artery. The rooster was briefly detained at a police station for potential evidence before being transferred to a farm. In 2015, 19-month-old Jazira Thompson was left home in Houston with her two 3-year-old siblings while their mother and her boyfriend went out for pizza. During the 2 hours they were gone, one sibling stuffed her into the oven and the other turned it on. When the couple returned, the two older children were frantic and crying in the kitchen, pointing to the oven and babbling in panic. In the chaos, the appliance had tipped over onto its side, preventing the small children from lifting it to free her. Inside, Jazira's small body was curled up, with burn patterns showing she'd been alive when the heat began. Her legs and feet blistered from pressing against the hot metal, and scuff marks on the door where she desperately kicked to escape. She eventually died from full-thickness burns and shock before help had any chance of arriving. The mother, Raquel Thompson, and her boyfriend Cornelius Williams were arrested and charged with 4 counts of child endangerment. Both faced up to 20 years in prison for leaving the young children unsupervised in a house full of hazards. Orlando Brown, who played Eddie Thomas on That's So Raven, has endured a bizarre and highly public downfall marked by addiction, homelessness, mental health struggles, and repeated run-ins with the law. Once a Disney Channel fan favorite, he's since been arrested for drug possession, faced assault charges, and made an infamous appearance on Dr. Phil, wearing eerie snake-eye contact lenses while making erratic statements. As his troubles have played out in a chaotic mix of arrests, unsettling public behavior, and strange interviews, friends and former colleagues have publicly expressed fear for his life. In 2004, Dutch filmmaker Theo van Gogh, the great-grandson of Vincent van Gogh's brother, was murdered in Amsterdam for his film Submission, which criticized the treatment of women in Islam. His killer, a radical Islamist, shot him, stabbed him, and nearly decapitated him, leaving a knife in his chest with a note threatening the film's co-creator. Rebecca Sherrick has hyperthymesia, an extremely rare condition that lets her recall every single day of her life in vivid detail, even memories from infancy. While it may sound extraordinary, she describes it as a curse that she can't turn off. Every embarrassment, heartbreak, and trauma plays back in her mind as clearly as the day it happened, trapping her in moments that most people get to forget. In 2015, YouTube prankster Sam Pepper lured Sam Goldback into a staged nightmare, faking his kidnapping with Colby Brock in on the plan. Sam was tied to a chair with a hood over his head, then forced to watch as a masked abductor held his best friend Colby at gunpoint before appearing to execute him at point-blank range. Sam's screams and sobs were genuine. He believed he'd just witnessed the murder of his best friend. But just moments later, Colby revealed it was all just an elaborate prank. The video drew massive backlash for its cruelty and for mimicking real-life execution videos, with critics calling it one of the most disturbing stunts in YouTube history. In the 1820s, Surgeon William Beaumont made history by experimenting on a man whose gunshot wound left a permanent hole in his stomach. He tied bits of food to strings, lowered them inside, and then pulled them out to watch them dissolve, sometimes peering directly into the man's gut or draining stomach acid to test it on food outside of his body. These grotesque experiments became the first to prove that digestion was a chemical process driven by gastric juices, making Beaumont both a pioneer of physiology and one of the more unsettling figures in medical history. In June of 2011, Jackass star Ryan Dunn left a bar in Pennsylvania in his Porsche 911 GT3 after posting a photo of himself drinking just hours earlier. Minutes later, he was dead. The car was obliterated after slamming into a tree at over 130 miles per hour, killing both he and his passenger, newlywed Navy veteran Zachary Hartwell. The wreckage was so violent that the engine flew more than 100 feet from the car, and the impact tore the vehicle into 2 burning sections. The death was eerily foreshadowed. A year earlier, Dunn played a man killed in a drunken crash in the film Living Will. Friends had joked that his Porsche was a widowmaker that he'd eventually wrap around a tree, and in a 2002 interview, he said he'd probably die in a ridiculous way. The loss sent Bam Margera, Dunn's best friend, into a years-long spiral of alcoholism, depression, and multiple rehab stints, marking the start of his personal decline. The death left the Jackass crew devastated and sparked ongoing debates about drunk driving in the entertainment world. In 1965, 16-year-old Sylvia Likens and her sister Jenny were left by their carnival worker parents in the care of 37-year-old Gertrude Baniszewski in Indianapolis for $20 a week. But when the payments began arriving late, Gertrude took her anger out on Sylvia in a sadistic rage. She singled Sylvia out, accused her of being promiscuous, and began systematically breaking her down. Over the next 3 months, Gertrude enlisted her own 7 children and neighborhood kids into the abuse, turning her home into a torture chamber for Sylvia. The girl was beaten daily, burned with cigarettes, scalded with boiling water, and forced to eat her own excrement. She was often stripped of her clothes, humiliated in front of strangers, and forced to perform degrading acts for Gertrude's amusement. Gertrude and her children would eat full meals in front of Sylvia while she sat hungry, often taunting her and dangling food just out of her reach. She was regularly tied up in uncomfortable positions and was eventually banished to the basement, left to lie on a urine-soaked mattress in the dark. By October of 1965, Sylvia's body was so emaciated she could barely stand. At some point in her final days, a heated needle was used to carve into her abdomen the words, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it." After collapsing from brain swelling, internal bleeding, and shock, Sylvia died alone on the filthy basement floor. When police found her body, they described it as one of the most horrific cases of child abuse in American history. Gertrude, 2 of her children, and 2 neighborhood boys were convicted, but none served out their full sentences, some walking free in less than 20 years. In 1984, while filming Armor of God in Yugoslavia, Jackie Chan attempted what should have been a routine stunt, jumping from a wall onto a tree branch. But the branch snapped, sending him plummeting headfirst onto a pile of jagged rocks. His skull immediately cracked open, driving bone fragments deep into his brain. Emergency surgery saved his life, but not without leaving a permanent hole in his skull. Now covered by a plastic plate he can still feel to this day. Melissa Nelson worked as a dental assistant in Iowa for over 10 years before being fired. Not for poor performance, but because her boss found her irresistible. He told her that if his pants ever bulged, it was her fault, and claimed that her presence alone threatened his marriage. Despite the clear sexual undertones, Melissa sued him for discrimination and lost. In a shocking 2012 decision, the all-male Iowa Supreme Court ruled that it was legal to fire someone for being too attractive, as long as it wasn't based on gender, but on personal feelings. In 2022, Twitch streamer and former adult star Adriana Chechik broke her back after jumping into a deceptively shallow foam pit at TwitchCon. The pit was barely padded over concrete and she fractured her spine in multiple places. While hospitalized, she discovered that she was pregnant, but the emergency surgery forced her to terminate the pregnancy. Metal rods were implanted as she had to relearn how to walk and was left with lasting nerve damage. The incident sparked outrage as others were also injured, but no real accountability followed. Chechik later said the experience destroyed a part of her life that she'll never get back. In 1996, Polish model and former Miss International Agnieszka Kotlarska narrowly escaped death when she canceled her seat at the last minute on TWA Flight 800, the doomed flight that exploded mid-air, killing all 230 people on board. But just weeks later, fate caught up with her. As she arrived home, a stalker she once knew attacked without warning, stabbing her to death in front of her husband and young daughter. To prove that mosquitoes transmitted yellow fever, American physician Jesse William Lazier deliberately allowed himself to be bitten by an infected mosquito. 17 days later, Lazier died from the very disease he was trying to study. His death confirmed the deadly role of mosquitoes in spreading yellow fever, sacrificing his life to save millions of others. In February of 1978, 5 friends from Yuba City, California, all with mild mental disabilities or psychiatric conditions, went to watch a college basketball game in Chico and never returned home. The next day, their Mercury Montego was found abandoned on a remote snowy mountain road in the Plumas National Forest. The car wasn't stuck by any means. It was perfectly drivable, had a quarter tank of gas, and showed no signs of mechanical trouble. The keys were gone, and it was parked as if someone expected to come back. It wasn't until 4 months later when melting snow finally revealed the first few bodies. 3 of the men's corpses were found scattered in the forest, between the car and a Forest Service trailer 19 miles away. Inside that trailer laid the 4th man, Ted Ware, wrapped in sheets and emaciated to just 120 pounds. He had grown a full beard, suggesting he had survived for weeks, but he starved to death, surrounded by enough canned food to last all 5 men more than a year. The food had been untouched except for a few open tins, and the propane tank outside had never been used to heat the trailer. The 5th man, Gary Mathias, was simply gone. Only his tennis shoes were found near Ware's body, implying he had left the trailer completely barefoot in deep snow. No other trace of him has ever been found. Why they abandoned the warm-stocked cabin, why they split up, and why they went up the mountain in the first place, in the opposite direction from home, all remain a mystery. Some believe they were chased, others think they panicked after a wrong turn, and some suspect Mathias's history of schizophrenia may have played a role. But after nearly 50 years, the case still remains unsolved. At age 15, actor Chad Michael Murray's intestines twisted around themselves in a rare medical emergency called a volvulus, cutting off blood flow and rupturing vessels. The blockage caused massive internal bleeding, and he collapsed before being rushed to the hospital. Doctors cut him open twice in desperate surgeries, untwisting and repairing his gut while removing damaged sections. He lost half of his blood, drifted in and out of consciousness, and lay so close to death that his family discussed last rites at his bedside. He was quickly hooked up to a critical blood transfusion, saving saving his life but leaving him with permanent scars and a gut rebuilt from the inside out. These haunting photos from 1960 show Otto Frank, the sole survivor of the secret annex, returning to the attic where his family hid for 2 years during Nazi occupation. In August of 1944, the Gestapo raided the hiding place after reportedly receiving an anonymous tip, though the betrayer was never definitively identified. This 2007 photo captured 8-year-old Christian Golchinski receiving the folded American flag from his father's coffin, Marine Staff Sergeant Mark Golchinski, who was killed by enemy fire in Iraq. The image became one of the war's most haunting symbols of sacrifice, a child forced to accept a flag in place of his father. In honor of the 80th anniversary, these are the most morbid facts about the atomic bombing of Nagasaki. Here's a photo of a young Japanese boy waiting for his turn to cremate his dead baby brother in Nagasaki. When the guard said, "Give me that load, boy," he replied saying, "It's not cargo, sir, he's my brother." Photographer Joe O'Donnell said the boy was biting his lips so hard to avoid crying that it was bleeding. The intense heat from the bomb caused the Urakami River and nearby water sources to boil. Many survivors, desperate and disoriented, jumped in to soothe their burns, only to collapse and die as their bodies cooked in the water. By the next morning, hundreds of swollen, burned corpses floated through the city's waterways. One of the first Japanese cities that the US planned on nuking was its former capital, Kyoto. The only reason it wasn't bombed was because US Secretary of War Henry Stimson spent his honeymoon there and thought it was a nice place. So instead of Kyoto, they targeted Nagasaki. Nagasaki was home to Japan's largest Christian community, many of whom were descendants of persecuted, hidden Christians. Within seconds, tens of thousands were wiped out, including priests, nuns, and entire families. Some scholars believe this made Nagasaki the largest single massacre of Christians since ancient times. Because so many doctors, nurses, and emergency workers were killed instantly, many survivors went untreated for days, their flesh rotting while still alive. Entire families died huddled together, slowly bleeding, burning, or vomiting to death. Even months after the bombing, farmers in the outskirts of Nagasaki reported finding charred body parts, arms, legs, fragments of skulls scattered across rice paddies and hillsides, having been blown out of the city by the blast. On August 6, 1945, Tsutomu Yamaguchi was on business in Hiroshima when the first atomic bomb exploded. The blast ruptured his eardrums, blinded him temporarily, and left serious burns all over his body. 3 days later, he returned to his job in Nagasaki, and his coworkers called him crazy as he told the details of a single bomb destroying an entire city. Just a few hours later, a second atomic bomb was dropped nearby, wiping out most of Nagasaki, but Yamaguchi survived yet again. He's the only man who's officially recognized for surviving both nuclear explosions. In 2016, Maze Runner star Dylan O'Brien was nearly killed during a stunt gone horribly wrong. While filming a scene involving 2 moving vehicles, he was violently dragged and run over, suffering a severe concussion, facial fractures, and brain damage. Production was shut down for nearly a year as he battled through physical and psychological recovery. At one point, O'Brien admitted he didn't know if he'd survive, let alone act again, saying he felt like a completely different person following the accident. Jamestown Governor John Ratcliffe, the real-life inspiration for the villain in Disney's Pocahontas, died horrifically in 1609. After being tricked and lured into an ambush by the Powhatan tribe, he was captured alive while most of his men were slaughtered. Colonial reports claimed Powhatan women skinned him alive using sharpened mussel shells, starting with his body and saving his face for last so that he'd remain conscious. They tossed strips of his flesh into a fire as he watched, then tied his fully skinned body to a stake and burned him alive, his screams echoing through the woods as a warning to any other Englishmen who dared to cross the Powhatan. Best known for her role on Modern Family, Sarah Hyland has undergone 2 kidney transplants and over a dozen surgeries due to a life-threatening condition called kidney dysplasia. While filming the show, she would often hold herself together just long enough to finish a scene, only to collapse in pain as soon as the camera stopped rolling. After her first kidney transplant failed, she spiraled into depression and revealed she had actively planned for her suicide, feeling like a burden to those around her. For years, she quietly endured chronic pain, medication side effects, and body image issues, all while playing the role of a bubbly sitcom star. In 2017, a petty argument over a $2 Call of Duty wager spiraled into a fatal tragedy. After 2 gamers got into a dispute, one of them enlisted a known swatter to call in a fake hostage situation at an address in Wichita, Kansas. But the address given wasn't even the other player's. It belonged to 28-year-old Andrew Finch, an innocent man with no connection to the game. When Finch stepped outside to see what was happening, a police sniper shot him dead within seconds despite Finch being unarmed. The swatter, Tyler Barris, was later sentenced to 20 years in prison, and the city eventually paid Finch's family $5 million. In December of 2017, 23-year-old adult film star August Ames faced intense backlash after tweeting about her decision not to work with a male performer who had also done gay scenes. She explained that some crossover performers may not be subject to the same testing protocols, and that she had the right to choose who she worked with to protect her own body. While her reasoning reflected a common practice in the industry, her comments were quickly labeled as homophobic by thousands online. Despite her attempts to clarify, she was flooded with cruel messages and harassment. Just 2 days after the tweet, August tragically took her own life. On September 26, 1999, 39-year-old Gladys Ricard stood in her living room dressed in her wedding gown, holding a bouquet of flowers. She was surrounded by family and friends, taking some photos before heading to the church for her wedding. But in one haunting image, she's seen turning toward the front door, seconds before her ex-boyfriend Augustine Garcia walked in uninvited. Without speaking, he pulled out a revolver and shot her 3 times, including once in the head, as her loved one screamed in horror. The entire attack was captured on video, and this last photo of Gladys became a haunting record of her final moments before being murdered. In honor of the 80th anniversary, these are the most morbid facts about the bombing of Hiroshima. Many people who witnessed the nuclear blast firsthand were blinded instantly. Some were even left with permanent atomic bomb cataracts like this one. When the bomb was dropped, the blast was so powerful that it permanently burned the shadows of objects and people into the ground. A few of these shadows remain imprinted in the Peace of Memorial Museum. The massive destruction of Hiroshima was caused by only a half a gram of matter being converted into energy, about the weight of a butterfly. Some Hiroshima survivors eventually grew black fingernails that looked like this. These fingernails contained active blood vessels and bled profusively when they broke off. If you're a certain distance from a nuclear explosion, you won't die immediately. Instead, you'll get third-degree burns all over your body, and your nerves will be killed so fast that you'll barely even feel it. This happened to a lot of victims in Hiroshima, and when rescuers would grab their arms to help them, their skin would slide off like a glove. The Japanese army had no idea Hiroshima had been bombed until an entire day after it happened. This was because there was no way to communicate with them, since the bomb destroyed all phone lines, telegraph lines, and radio transmitters. They had to literally fly an official out to Hiroshima to find out why they weren't communicating, and he found a city that was completely obliterated. Albert Einstein encouraged President Roosevelt to develop the atomic bomb because he feared the Nazis would make one first. But he deeply regretted this after hearing about the devastation of Hiroshima, and knowing that his discoveries led to the invention of the atomic bomb made him very depressed. Here's a watch found in the Hiroshima rubble that's permanently stopped at 8:15 a.m., the exact time of the bomb's detonation. Godzilla was created as a metaphor for nuclear weapons and was given the appearance of a Hiroshima victim. His atomic breath is meant to symbolize the blasts and devastation of the bombs, and he's covered in keloid scars to depict the brutal body scars of Hiroshima survivors. In fact, those who suffered the most from the bombings were in such horrific condition that people called them ant-walking alligators. According to one account, they were described to be, quote, faceless with their heads transformed into blackened alligator hides with red holes indicating mouths. They had once been human. When the sky exploded, they'd had the misfortune to survive. The alligator people did not scream. Their mouths couldn't form the sounds. The noise they made was worse than screaming. They uttered a continuous murmur like locusts on a midsummer night. One man, staggering on the charred stumps of legs, was carrying a dead baby upside down. None of them survived for long. He went to a high school party and never returned home. In May of 2022, tensions erupted between 2 groups of teens at a house party in Shelton, Connecticut. After an initial fight broke out at one location, the crowd dispersed, only for a second gathering to form later that night on Laurel Glen Drive. Among those who showed up was 16-year-old Raul Valley, who later admitted to arming himself with a knife before returning with his friends to confront the larger group. He claimed he acted in self-defense, saying he felt threatened and outnumbered when a brawl broke out again. During the chaos, Raul allegedly stabbed 4 teenagers, claiming he feared that his life was in danger, though some questioned the extent of his injuries based on the photos presented in court. According to witness testimony, as the fighting began to die down, Valley allegedly lunged at 17-year-old Fairfield Prep student Jimmy McGrath, who prosecutors described as an innocent bystander, fatally stabbing him in the chest as he was backing away. Valley later rejected a 40-year plea deal and took the case to trial in July of 2025. He was acquitted of murder, intentional manslaughter, and intentional assault, but the jury deadlocked 11-1 on reckless manslaughter, resulting in a partial mistrial. Prosecutors are now pursuing a retrial on those unresolved charges. In the aftermath, a wave of support for Raoul flooded social media, often ignoring or downplaying the death of Jimmy altogether. Posts portraying Valley as the real victim while blaming Jimmy simply for being there quickly circulated, despite numerous witness accounts stating Jimmy had no involvement in the conflict. Remembered as a standout lacrosse player, Jimmy was the only teen who lost his life that night, a senseless tragedy that left a hole in the town he grew up in. His death remains a heartbreaking reminder of how quickly teenage conflict can result in the loss of an innocent life, as those closest to him are still waiting for true accountability. Roseanne Barr's life has been marked by a series of dark and dramatic turns. At 16, she suffered a near-fatal brain injury when a car accident launched her through a windshield, embedding a hood ornament into her skull and triggering violent seizures. The trauma led to an 8-month stay in a psychiatric institution, where she later claimed she was over-medicated and misdiagnosed. Her career eventually soared with the TV show Roseanne, but it was repeatedly marred by controversy, including her infamous 1990 national anthem performance, which ended with her grabbing her crotch and spitting on the field. Diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, Roseanne has spoken openly about living with multiple personalities and the lingering effects of severe childhood trauma. In 2018, her career came crashing down after she posted a racist tweet that sparked nationwide backlash. ABC canceled her sitcom reboot within hours, and the network continued the show without her, writing her character off with a fatal opioid overdose in The Conners. In April of 2024, fitness influencer Joey Swoll faced a terrifying near-death experience during what was supposed to be a routine 30-minute heart test. While undergoing an angiogram, a piece of medical equipment broke off inside his heart, causing him to crash mid-procedure. Doctors had to perform a 6-hour emergency surgery to remove the foreign object and stabilize him, even resorting to implanting a heart pump to keep him alive. The lead surgeon described the situation as unprecedented and miraculous, saying Joey came dangerously close to dying on the table. Here's a terrifying video of a diver encountering a candiru fish and clenching his knees for good reason. These spiny parasitic fish have been rumored to swim up human urethras, latching on with barbed spines and requiring extremely painful surgery to remove. While dissecting the donated body of a 78-year-old man, medical students were stunned to find he had not one, not two, but 3 tallywhackers. The 2 extras were tiny, tucked-away trouser snakes hiding deep in his beanbag. But since they were completely hidden and non-functional, there's a good chance the guy went his whole life unaware he was packing a secret sausage trio. 2000, a love triangle featured on The Jerry Springer Show resulted in a real-life murder just hours after the episode aired. The segment, titled Secret Mistresses Confronted, brought together 42-year-old Ralph Panitz, his new wife Eleanor, and his ex-wife Nancy Panitz in a televised spectacle of screaming and public humiliation. On the night the episode aired, weeks after it was taped, Ralph reportedly watched it while drinking at a bar in Sarasota, growing increasingly enraged as his private shame played out on national television. Apparently fueled by humiliation and fury, he drove to his ex-wife Nancy's home, where she had been granted temporary possession during their divorce, and launched into a violent assault. He beat her so viciously that she was found naked, bloodied, and lifeless on the floor, her body showing signs of a prolonged and violent beating. Ralph was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison in 2002. The case remains a haunting example of how reality TV's thirst for drama can spill into real-life horror. In 2007, Miles Teller narrowly survived a horrific car crash when the vehicle he was inside of flipped 8 times at nearly 80 miles per hour, ejecting him through a window and flinging his body over 30 feet. He was found unconscious and covered in blood, with deep facial gashes and a broken wrist, injuries that required years of painful laser treatments. As if that weren't enough, within the next year, Miles lost 2 of his closest friends in separate vehicle accidents just weeks apart. One was killed in a motorcycle crash and the other in a car accident, both devastating losses that deeply affected Teller in his early 20s. As a result, the actor developed a profound sense of gratitude and now takes nothing for granted, an outlook that deeply influences both his personal life and career. In 1992, Annette Herfkens was the sole survivor of a plane crash that killed all 30 others on board, including her fiancé. The aircraft went down in the remote Vietnamese jungle just 50 minutes into the flight. Trapped inside the mangled wreckage with a collapsed lung, broken ribs, and surrounded by rotting corpses, she was too injured to leave the crash site. For 8 days, she fought to stay alive by drinking rainwater as the stench of death closed in. As her body weakened, she even considered cannibalizing the bodies around her, but didn't have the strength for it. When rescuers finally arrived, she was barely conscious, buried in wreckage and decay next to the corpse of the love of her life, but she eventually made a full recovery. Last summer, 36-year-old Italian surfer Giuliana Manfrini died in a total freak accident while surfing off the coast of Indonesia. When she was catching a wave, a swordfish suddenly leaped out of the water and stabbed her directly in the chest with its bill. Despite immediate first aid from her surfing buddies and being rushed to a local hospital, she couldn't be saved. Here's the grave of a woman who chose to leave her name off and instead gave it the inscription, "I was somebody." She apparently told the cemetery sexton that eventually nobody would remember her anyway, so this inscription would at least be more memorable than she was. While on an African safari in 1963, Ernest Hemingway survived 2 plane crashes in a row. The first plane collided with a telephone wire and wound up in the Nile, leaving him with minor injuries. While Hemingway was being rescued from this first crash, the rescue plane also crashed. The plane caught on fire, so Ernest had to smash the door open with his head, causing extensive burns and a fractured skull. The novelist was presumed dead until he walked out of the jungle in high spirits, carrying bananas and a bottle of gin. In March of 1989, Texas college student Mark Kilroy went missing while vacationing for spring break just across the Mexican border. An extensive search took place that quickly turned dark when investigators discovered that Kilroy had been kidnapped by a drug cult that believed human sacrifices would protect their operations from law enforcement. On the cult's ranch, they found 16 bodies, including Kilroy's, that had been sacrificed in occult ceremonies. The student had been tortured, sodomized, and killed with a machete during a sacrificial ritual, after which his brain and spine were removed from his body. The cult's leader evaded capture by taking his own life, but 14 others were prosecuted for their heinous crimes. After George Harrison of the Beatles died from brain and lung cancer in 2001, his widow sued one of the doctors at the hospital where George received his radiation therapy. The man allegedly forced him to listen to his son play guitar and autograph the guitar while George was barely coherent in his final days. In 2020, Costco stopped selling Chowco coconut milk after its manufacturer was accused of using forced monkey labor. Groups of chained-up macaques were allegedly forced to pick coconuts and had their teeth pulled if they tried to resist. Costco halted purchases and demanded audits from the Thailand-based company to ensure humane practices. Here's a photo of Marine Sergeant Tyler Ziegel and his partner Renee Klein on their wedding day in 2006, before she would end up divorcing him just 1 year later due to his disfigurement. While on tour in Iraq, Ziegel was critically injured in a suicide bombing, losing his left hand, 3 fingers on his right hand, part of his skull, and sight in one eye, while his ears, nose, and lips were completely burnt off. Unable to work, he relied on benefits from the VA, but they paid him much less than expected, so he struggled financially. In 2012, Ziegel tragically died from an overdose on morphine and alcohol at the young age of 30. In 2023, a 17-year-old high school student from Florida died from an allergic reaction to pistachio nuts. She reportedly asked the staff if the baklava being served contained any nuts and was told no, despite baklava always being made with nuts. The girl immediately started showing signs of a severe reaction and was allowed to leave school to pick up some Benadryl from a local pharmacy, but the school never called 911. The teenager soon went into anaphylactic shock, slipped into a coma, and tragically passed away. Her family is now suing the school for $50,000 for their critical negligence. 2008, 24-year-old real estate agent Lindsay Buziak was lured to a home in British Columbia by a mysterious couple using fake names and a prepaid burner phone. The woman who contacted her spoke with a strange fake-sounding accent and insisted that they were in a rush to buy $1 million home, but said they would only deal with Lindsay even though she was a newer agent. The call made her uneasy, and she confided in friends and family that something felt off. Out of caution, she asked her boyfriend to be nearby during the showing. But as soon as she entered the home with the supposed clients, she was brutally stabbed over 40 times. There were no signs of robbery or sexual assault, and nothing was damaged. Lindsay's boyfriend arrived minutes later and found her dying upstairs, but the killers had vanished. The burner phone used to set up the meeting was deactivated immediately after the murder. Despite public pleas, heavy media coverage, and theories ranging from drug-related retaliation to a personal hit, Lindsay's case still remains unsolved. Here are some morbid facts about Martin Luther King. When MLK's grandmother died when he was 12 years old, he blamed himself and tried to take his own life. King would end up suffering from severe bouts of depression throughout his life, even though he was never officially diagnosed. MLK died when he was only 39 years old, but an autopsy found that he had the heart of a 60-year-old, likely due to stress. After King was killed in 1968, his funeral was held at Morehouse College in Atlanta. A small group of students were chosen to be ushers for his funeral, and one of them was Samuel L. Jackson. King's own family publicly supported James Earl Ray's efforts for a retrial. They didn't think he actually assassinated MLK and fully believed it was the US government instead. King's mother Alberta was also killed 6 years after her son was assassinated. She was fatally shot by a 23-year-old black man who thought that black civil rights activists and ministers were evil. The man yelled, "You are serving a false god," and shot Alberta with 2 handguns while she was playing on an organ during a church service in Atlanta. While filming for Gladiator, Oliver Reed died suddenly after challenging a group of sailors to a drinking contest at a bar. The actor consumed 8 pints of beer, 12 shots of rum, several shots of cognac, and an entire bottle of whiskey. He fell ill during the match and collapsed, dying of a heart attack in the ambulance en route to the hospital. It ended up costing the production company $3 million to recreate Reed's face with CGI, so he could appear in all the scenes that still needed to be filmed. Here's a photo taken by Challenger Deep of a beer bottle resting on the ocean floor 35,000 feet down, the deepest known point on the Earth's surface. This is the last known photo taken of Janet Johnson, a famous American mountaineer known for completing many difficult climbs throughout the world. She disappeared along with her friend John Cooper during a climb in 1973, until their bodies were found separately 2 years later, both wearing just one shoe and missing their ice picks. Cooper was found with a bloody wound on his stomach and a look of horror frozen on his face. Accordingly, several people, including examiners of the autopsy, believe that both Cooper and Johnson were murdered. The photo above was only discovered in 2020 when climbers found Janet's backpack and camera within the melting glacier. This was the last photo ever taken of Marco Siffredi, the first man to descend Mount Everest on a snowboard. He was attempting his second descent in 2002 when Sherpas urged him not to go due to bad weather conditions, but Siffredi ignored their warnings and was never seen again. In 1999, Little League baseball player Kevin Stephen was hit in the chest by a baseball bat, causing his heart to suddenly stop. Luckily, off-duty nurse Penny Brown was in attendance and saved the boy's life by giving him CPR. 7 years later, Penny Brown was choking at a restaurant when one of the workers rushed over to give her the Heimlich maneuver, thus saving her life. That worker was Kevin Stephen. Jacques Hebert was a revolutionary French journalist during the Reign of Terror, who was heavily in favor of beheading anyone who disagreed with his radical views. After he accused Marie Antoinette of incest with her son, Hebert was sentenced to death via guillotine. He reportedly fainted several times on the way to his execution and screamed hysterically when placed under the blade. To amuse the crowd and make a statement, the executioners rigged the blade to stop inches from Hebert's neck. They did this 3 times before finally executing him on the 4th attempt. In 1996, a stalker named Robert Dewey Hoskins told Madonna's assistants that he would slash her throat from ear to ear unless she married him. He then jumped the fence at the singer's home before being shot by a bodyguard, but survived and was arrested. Madonna would later testify against Hoskins in court, saying she felt sick to her stomach just being in the same room with him and had recurring nightmares about him chasing her. After being deemed highly psychotic and extremely violent, Hoskins was sent to a mental hospital, which he briefly escaped from in 2012. Just last year, a zookeeper from Uzbekistan was eaten alive while attempting to round up 3 lions that escaped from their enclosure. He apparently recorded the entire ordeal on his phone while attempting to impress his girlfriend, as his deathly screams could clearly be heard in the footage. Rescuers say they had no choice but to tranquilize 2 of the lions, while shooting the 3rd dead before finding the zookeeper's mangled remains. In 2013, a Swedish prisoner escaped from the facility because he had a severe toothache and was denied medical care. He broke out, saw a dentist who pulled out his tooth, and then turned himself back in. 7. A 22-year-old woman from Ireland was recently left with severe internal injuries after her butt plug was pulled through her body during an MRI scan. She apparently believed she was safe to insert it before the procedure, believing the plug was made entirely of silicone. But it actually contained a metal core, causing it to react to the scanner's powerful magnets. She's expected to recover in the hospital, but this is why doctors always say you should never wear a butt plug while getting an MRI. In another ridiculous MRI case in 2023, a Brazilian lawyer tragically died after a scanner caused his gun to fire inside of the machine. After being repeatedly asked by doctors to remove all metal objects, Leandro Novaes decided not to reveal that he had a gun in his waistband, which ended up firing into his stomach. He spent several weeks in the hospital before succumbing to his costly bad decision. This case was a big reason why doctors always remind their patients to remove any firearms before receiving an MRI. During a trip to Paris in 2007, Prince Harry had his driver go through the same tunnel that his mother, Princess Diana, died in, at the same speed her car was going at the time, as he was trying to find closure for her death. He later described the attempt as ill-conceived, saying it only brought him more pain as it was just a regular tunnel that nobody should have ever died in. James Hemming, the man who introduced mac and cheese to the United States, served as a slave to Thomas Jefferson and took his own life at the young age of 36 after years of suffering from severe alcoholism. Just last year, a 27-year-old model from New York City shot and killed her husband before turning the gun on herself. It was later revealed that she did it to prevent him from finding out that she cheated on him, which would have resulted in their divorce. In 2022, college wrestlers Kendall Cummings and Brad Lowry were hiking in the woods near Yellowstone when Lowry was suddenly attacked by a grizzly bear. Kendall yelled and threw rocks at the bear to no avail, so he decided to jump on its back. This allowed Lowry to escape and get help while Kendall wrestled the bear until it ran off. Despite several deep wounds, both men were rescued and survived. 1994, 13-year-old Texas boy Nicholas Barkley went missing after playing basketball with some friends. 3 years later, he was found in Spain and reunited with his family, but something was very off. The boy who came back had darker hair, brown eyes instead of blue, and a French accent, while looking much older than Nicholas would have been at the time. But perhaps blinded by grief, the Barkley family accepted this boy without question despite these major differences. To be fair, he claimed his kidnappers had taken him to France, dyed his hair, and changed his eye color to hide his identity. But a private investigator would soon reveal the boy's true identity as Frederick Borden, a 23-year-old Frenchman with a history of impersonating missing kids. Borden had apparently been searching for love and affection that he never received as a child. Known as the Chameleon, he's assumed over 500 false identities throughout his life, including those of orphans. Meanwhile, the true fate of Nicholas Barkley remains unknown to this day. In the middle of a courtroom in 1993, Ellie Nessler fatally shot Daniel Driver 5 times in the head during his trial after he sexually abused her 6-year-old son. She claimed she acted in a moment of rage after learning that Driver might evade justice. Ellie was initially sentenced to 10 years in prison after it was revealed she was high on meth during the shooting, but only ended up serving 3. In 2015, a stray cat named Masha found an abandoned baby inside a box in the freezing cold streets of Russia. She climbed in to keep the baby warm while meowing to get the attention of passers-by, thus saving the baby's life. In 1985, Clive Wearing suffered a severe case of amnesia after a viral infection caused damage to the hippocampus of his brain. Ever since then, his memory only lasts about 20 seconds before completely resetting since his brain is incapable of forming new memories. He spends all day thinking he just woke up from the coma he was in 1985. Clive often gets very frustrated in the middle of conversations and can't even remember what food he's eating by the time it reaches his mouth. When asked what it's like to have this awful condition, Clive replied, "It's exactly the same as being dead. To be dead is easy. You don't do anything at all. I've never been bored or upset. I've never been anything at all. It's exactly the same as death. No dreams even. Day and night, the same." One of France's biggest streamers has died after live streaming for nearly 300 hours straight. Jean Pormanov, a 46-year-old kick streamer, died on camera in August of 2025 after a staggering 298-hour live stream filled with months of escalating abuse. Known online for bizarre endurance streams, he became the target of cruel content orchestrated by his co-hosts and egged on by donations. Slapped, strangled, suffocated with plastic bags, shocked with electricity, mocked and humiliating costumes, and deprived of sleep. Shortly before his death, he wrote to his mother, "I feel like I'm kidnapped. I want to get out of here, but the other guy won't let me. He's keeping me locked in." Just days later, he died in his sleep during the marathon stream. French prosecutors are now investigating his collaborators for deliberate violence and exploitation, while Kick, the platform hosting the stream, faces global outrage for failing to stop it. What viewers thought was twisted entertainment turned out to be the slow public destruction of a man. In August of 2023, Lil Tay's Instagram suddenly announced that she and her brother had died, sparking worldwide shock online. But within a day, she appeared alive, calling the post a cruel hack. Meta confirmed her account had been compromised, but suspicions lingered. Tay publicly accused her estranged father of planting the hoax, while others believe her brother staged it for attention. Then in 2024, she revealed that she'd been diagnosed with an actual life-threatening heart tumor and underwent successful open heart surgery, posting photos from her hospital bed. In 1978, 22-year-old art student Harold Brown fell 324 feet, nearly 30 stories, through the Transamerica Pyramid in San Francisco after crawling into a ventilation shaft. A guard who witnessed the fall swore he heard Brown yelling "whoopee" on the way down, as if enjoying the plunge. Against all odds, Brown survived the impact on the concrete base with both legs shattered, kneecaps destroyed, and a crushed heel bone, but no internal injuries. Minutes later, he regained consciousness and shocked rescuers by singing Camptown Races as they carried him out. LeVar Ball, father of NBA stars Lonzo and LaMelo, nearly died in early 2025 after a diabetic infection in his foot spread to his bloodstream. Multiple surgeries followed, first removing toes, then his foot, and finally amputating his leg below the knee along with 4 blood transfusions. At one point, he was in so much pain that he told his doctors to let him die, but his sons pushed him to fight. Now he uses the ordeal to warn others about ignoring symptoms and the dangers of unmanaged diabetes. In 2017, 25-year-old Akbar Salubiro suddenly vanished after harvesting palm oil in a remote Indonesian village. The next day, locals found a 23-foot-long reticulated python nearby with an unnaturally swollen belly. Fearing the worst, they cut the snake open and pulled out Akbar's fully clothed body still intact. Experts believe the snake ambushed him as he was walking home, constricted him to death, and swallowed him whole because he was alone in a forested area where large prey was scarce. It was the first confirmed and fully documented case of a human being swallowed whole by a python, with graphic photos and videos of the recovery sparking worldwide horror. Extra Morbid Facts, Part 2. In 2005, during a heated argument over her newborn's paternity, China Arnold ended her 1-month-old daughter's life in a completely unimaginable way. The next day, she took the infant to the hospital, claiming she'd been unresponsive in her playpen. But an autopsy revealed the baby had suffered severe internal burns with no external damage, injuries only consistent with being placed in the microwave. Investigators determined she'd been inside for about 2 minutes, essentially cooking her from the inside out. The woman is now serving life in prison without parole. This is the grave of Vietnam War veteran Gene Simmers, who dedicated it to the elderly woman he'd killed more than 50 years before he died. In 2016, a man who lost his leg in a motorcycle accident convinced the hospital to let him keep his amputated leg. Weeks later, he invited friends over for tacos, made from slices of his own calf muscle. Everyone who ate it was a consenting adult, and since cannibalism itself isn't illegal in most states, no crime was committed. They described the taste as beefy but chewier. 1994, FedEx flight engineer Auburn Calloway boarded Flight 705 with a guitar case. Inside were 2 claw hammers, a spear gun, and a plan to murder the crew. Facing termination for lying about his flight hours, he knew FedEx's life insurance would still pay out if he died in a workplace accident. So his plan was to bludgeon the pilots to death mid-air, crash the plane, and make it look like a mechanical failure, so that his ex-wife and kids could collect the payout. Once airborne, he ambushed the crew, cracking skulls and severing arteries with hammer blows. One pilot lost half his blood, while another had his face crushed and nearly lost an eye as Calloway tried to gouge it out. But bleeding out and barely conscious, the pilots fought back, rolling the plane 140 degrees to disorient him and eventually beating him into submission. When paramedics boarded, they found the rear of the cockpit drenched in blood. Calloway was sentenced to life in prison without parole, and none of the pilots ever flew commercially again. Conan O'Brien's world was rocked in 2024 when both of his parents, married for 66 years, died just 3 days apart. His father passed at 95, followed shortly by his mother at 92, leaving Conan to plan 2 funerals back-to-back before rushing overseas to continue filming Conan O'Brien Must Go. Still reeling from the loss, he was then forced to evacuate Los Angeles due to the raging wildfires. Conan later admitted he spent that entire period in a fugue state, emotionally numb and running on autopilot even as he hosted the Oscars. Tasmanian tiger was hunted to extinction after being falsely blamed for killing sheep, despite having jaws far too weak to take down large prey. The last known thylacine Benjamin froze to death while in captivity in 1936, just 2 months after the species finally gained legal protection. Croatian nurse Hedviga Golic died alone in her apartment in 1966 and was left undiscovered for 42 years. Her mummified remains were finally found in 2008 during renovations, after decades of neighbors assuming she'd simply moved away. Her electricity bills were quietly paid by the building's architect until shortly before her body was found. And Bilzerian, once dubbed the king of Instagram, built his online image around guns, women, and money, but his real-life track record is much darker. He's been sued for tossing an adult film actress off a roof and shattering her foot, allegedly kicked a woman in the face during a nightclub brawl, and was arrested on bomb-making charges after causing an open fire in Nevada. He also suffered 2 heart attacks before the age of 28, reportedly triggered by a cocktail of drugs including cocaine, ecstasy, and Viagra taken during non-stop parties. In interviews, he's admitted to nearly dying multiple times from drug overdoses and claims his heart had temporarily stopped at least once. He was present during the 2017 Las Vegas mass shooting, where he fled the scene, returned to film bodies, and bizarrely asked police for a gun. On the business front, his company Ignite faced financial scrutiny as he sued his own father over alleged mismanagement tied to a $180 million fraud case. Today, Bilzerian lives in relative obscurity compared to his peak fame, his story now seen by many as proof that money, fame, and indulgence don't always add up to a perfect life. 2. In August of 2008, popular DJ Deadmau5 and his tour manager missed their connecting flight in Barcelona by just a few minutes. While waiting in the terminal, pissed off that they would miss their next show, they watched as their flight took off and immediately crashed due to mechanical failure, killing 154 of the 172 passengers on board. Deadmau5 said after witnessing the tragedy, quote, "There were maybe 800 to 1,000 people in the airport and nobody made an effing sound. It was the creepiest shit." In Singapore, every person over 21 years old is automatically registered as an organ donor. Those who opt out are placed at the bottom of the priority list if they ever need an organ transplant. In 2010, 72-year-old Linda Chase left her roommate's dead body in the recliner chair that he died in for 18 months. She talked to his decaying corpse and watched NASCAR with him every day. After police performed a welfare check and found the man's body, Linda's only explanation was that she didn't want to be alone and he was the only person who was ever nice to her. She only got in trouble for cashing some of his benefit checks and was sentenced to 3 years probation and mental health treatment. In June of 2011, Jackass star Ryan Dunn left a bar in Pennsylvania in his Porsche 911 GT3 after posting a photo of himself drinking just hours earlier. Minutes later, he was dead. The car was obliterated after slamming into a tree at over 130 miles per hour, killing both he and his passenger, newlywed Navy veteran Zachary Hartwell. The wreckage was so violent that the engine flew more than 100 feet from the car, and the impact tore the vehicle into 2 burning sections. The death was eerily foreshadowed. A year earlier, Dunn played a man killed in a drunken crash in the film Living Will. Friends had joked that his Porsche was a widowmaker that he'd eventually wrap around a tree, and in a 2002 interview, he said he'd probably die in a ridiculous way. The loss sent Bam Margera, Dunn's best friend, into a years-long spiral of alcoholism, depression, and multiple rehab stints, marking the start of his personal decline. The death left the Jackass crew devastated and sparked ongoing debates about drunk driving in the entertainment world. Extra morbid facts. In 1965, 16-year-old Sylvia Likens and her sister Jenny were left by their carnival worker parents in the care of 37-year-old Gertrude Baniszewski in Indianapolis for $20 a week. But when the payments began arriving late, Gertrude took her anger out on Sylvia in a sadistic rage. She singled Sylvia out, accused her of being promiscuous, and began systematically breaking her down. Over the next 3 months, Gertrude enlisted her own 7 children and neighborhood kids into the abuse, turning her home into a torture chamber for Sylvia. The girl was beaten daily, burned with cigarettes, scalded with boiling water, and forced to eat her own excrement. She was often stripped of her clothes, humiliated in front of strangers, and forced to perform degrading acts for Gertrude's amusement. Gertrude and her children would eat full meals in front of Sylvia while she sat hungry, often taunting her and dangling food just out of her reach. She was regularly tied up in uncomfortable positions and was eventually banished to the basement, left to lie on a urine-soaked mattress in the dark. By October of 1965, Sylvia's body was so emaciated she could barely stand. At some point in her final days, a heated needle was used to carve into her abdomen the words, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it." After collapsing from brain swelling, internal bleeding, and shock, Sylvia died alone on the filthy basement floor. When police found her body, they described it as one of the most horrific cases of child abuse in American history. Gertrude, 2 of her children, and 2 neighborhood boys were convicted, but none served out their full sentences, some walking free in less than 20 years. Morbid facts. February of 1978, 5 friends from Yuba City, California, all with mild mental disabilities or psychiatric conditions, went to watch a college basketball game in Chico and never returned home. The next day, their Mercury Montego was found abandoned on a remote snowy mountain road in the Plumas National Forest. The car wasn't stuck by any means. It was perfectly drivable, had a quarter tank of gas, and showed no signs of mechanical trouble. The keys were gone, and it was parked as if someone expected to come back. It wasn't until 4 months later when melting snow finally revealed the first few bodies. 3 of the men's corpses were found scattered in the forest between the car and a Forest Service trailer 19 miles away. Inside that trailer laid the 4th man, Ted Ware, wrapped in sheets and emaciated to just 120 pounds. He had grown a full beard, suggesting he had survived for weeks, but he starved to death, surrounded by enough canned food to last all 5 men more than a year. The food had been untouched except for a few open tins, and the propane tank outside had never been used to heat the trailer. The 5th man, Gary Mathias, was simply gone. Only his tennis shoes were found near Ware's body, implying he had left the trailer completely barefoot in deep snow. No other trace of him has ever been found. Why they abandoned the warm-stocked cabin, why they split up, and why they went up the mountain in the first place, in the opposite direction from home, all remain a mystery. Some believe they were chased, others think they panicked after a wrong turn, and some suspect Mathias's history of schizophrenia may have played a role. But after nearly 50 years, the case still remains unsolved. Morbid facts. In 1984, while filming Armor of God in Yugoslavia, Jackie Chan attempted what should have been a routine stunt, jumping from a wall onto a tree branch. But the branch snapped, sending him plummeting headfirst onto a pile of jagged rocks. His skull immediately cracked open, driving bone fragments deep into his brain. Emergency surgery saved his life, but not without leaving a permanent hole in his skull. Now covered by a plastic plate he can still feel to this day. Melissa Nelson worked as a dental assistant in Iowa for over 10 years before being fired. Not for poor performance, but because her boss found her irresistible. He told her that if his pants ever bulged, it was her fault, and claimed that her presence alone threatened his marriage. Despite the clear sexual undertones, Melissa sued him for discrimination and lost. In a shocking 2012 decision, the all-male Iowa Supreme Court ruled that it was legal to fire someone for being too attractive, as long as it wasn't based on gender, but on personal feelings. Morbid fact. Orlando Brown, who played Eddie Thomas on That's So Raven, has endured a bizarre and highly public downfall marked by addiction, homelessness, mental health struggles, and repeated run-ins with the law. Once a Disney Channel fan favorite, he's since been arrested for drug possession, faced assault charges, and made an infamous appearance on Dr. Phil, wearing eerie snake-eye contact lenses while making erratic statements. As his troubles have played out in a chaotic mix of arrests, unsettling public behavior, and strange interviews, friends and former colleagues have publicly expressed fear for his life. In 2004, Dutch filmmaker Theo van Gogh, the great-grandson of Vincent van Gogh's brother, was murdered in Amsterdam for his film Submission, which criticized the treatment of women in Islam. His killer, a radical Islamist, shot him, stabbed him, and nearly decapitated him, leaving a knife in his chest with a note threatening the film's co-creator. Rebecca Sherrick has hyperthymesia, an extremely rare condition that lets her recall every single day of her life in vivid detail, even memories from infancy. While it may sound extraordinary, she describes it as a curse that she can't turn off. Every embarrassment, heartbreak, and trauma plays back in her mind as clearly as the day it happened, trapping her in moments that most people get to forget. Weird Nature Facts, Part 9. In 1989, a Costa Rican fisherman named Chito rescued a dying crocodile and nursed it back to health. He tried to release the croc back into the wild, but it just kept coming back. The two would eventually become best friends, and for the next 2 decades, Chito would swim and play with the croc in the river outside of his home. He would hug and kiss the 16-foot-long crocodile he named Pocho, and taught it many tricks. Pocho knew how to roll over, wink, and would let Chito put his head in his mouth. The monster croc even responded when his name was called. Pocho sadly died in 2011, but this amazing crocodile-human relationship will never be forgotten. Scientists believe that a function of zebra stripes is to deter insects. So researchers painted stripes on several cows and discovered that it reduced the number of bug bites by more than 50%. The Costa Rican glass frog has transparent skin, enabling you to see its entire organ structure. Dragonflies are nature's deadliest predators when it comes to catching prey. They catch more than 95% of the prey they target, making them 4 times as successful as the king of the jungle. Octopus truly are nature's aliens. They have 3 hearts, 9 brains, and blue blood. Koalas sleep for 22 hours a day. The rest of their time is spent eating and wandering around aimlessly looking for a mate. When they don't find one, they give up and go back to sleep without a care in the world. Species of tarantulas keep tiny frogs as pets. The frog is protected from predators, and in return, the tarantula's burrow is protected from pests that are too small for the spider to deal with. Cats were likely domesticated by humans through the same process. Farmers who own ostrich farms often struggle with breeding. This is because ostriches are sometimes more attracted to humans than other ostriches. Cheetahs are so closely related that you can freely transplant organs between each member of the species without immunosuppression. In 1970, Fraser the lion was adopted by a safari in Florida at the age of 18, which is the human equivalent to the age of 80. He was blind, toothless, and could barely walk, but was still responsible for the births of 35 cubs at the park. While it may look edited, this is just a photo of the giant African land snail. While often considered to be an invasive species, they can be kept as pets. They can live for several years and can grow up to 8 inches long. Photographer Herbert van der Beek captured this extremely rare moment of a jaguar diving underwater to catch its prey. Leoconcha hieroglyphica is a mollusk that received its name because it looks like it's covered in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. Only discovered in 1976, the megamouth shark is an extremely rare species of deep water shark. Less than 100 of them have ever been seen or caught. Although they look nothing alike, the stunningly iridescent Nicobar pigeon is the closest living relative to the extinct dodo bird. In proportion to body weight, koalas have one of the smallest brains of any mammal. They're so dumb that when presented with leaves on a flat surface instead of on branches, they are unable to recognize them as food and will not eat them. Dogs get sprayed by skunks so often because skunks raise their tails as a warning. Dogs see this as "come smell my butt," which is the exact opposite message of what the skunk is trying to send. In Germany, it is illegal to kill any vertebrate animal without proper reason. Because of this, all German animal shelters are no-kill. In the 1980s, Ken the orangutan escaped from his enclosure at the San Diego Zoo multiple times. His apparent goals were visiting other animals, taking photos with tourists, and throwing rocks at his orangutan rival. Scientists who first discovered the platypus thought it was fake. They assumed that an egg-laying, duck-billed, venomous mammal with the tail of a beaver had to be an elaborate hoax. Standing at 380 feet tall, Hyperion is the largest known living tree in the world. Located somewhere in California, its exact location is kept a secret to protect it from vandals. A Japanese zoo once tried to mate a pair of hyenas for 4 years before realizing that they were both males. This resilient tree had all of its soil washed away but still refused to die. These are some examples of animals that are bilateral gynandromorphs. It's a genetic mutation that causes one of their first cells to be male and the other to be female. The result is an extraordinary animal that's male on one side and female on the other. A man in Washington state found a caterpillar that looks like it has the image of a human face on its back. The internet is pretty sure it was the reincarnation of Edgar Allan Poe. Otters in the Amazon are apex predators that can grow up to 6 feet long. They have been known to prey on small anacondas and caimans when fish are unavailable. The giant groundsel is a prehistoric plant that is only found on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. For years, scientists didn't know what created various massive cave networks in South America. In 2010, they learned that the caves were actually tunnels dug by ancient giant ground sloths. The blue American rabbit was developed in 1917 by Lewis H. Salisbury. Although it's natural, he never revealed what breeds he used to create this variety. In 1998, Honduras built a bridge over the Choluteca River, but the water was rerouted by Hurricane Mitch that same year. This mutated octopus with 85 tentacles was captured on an island near Japan. Known for its protrusible jaw and nail-like teeth, the goblin shark has only been seen about 50 times since its discovery in 1897. In 1493, Christopher Columbus mistook manatees for mermaids and wrote, "They're not so beautiful as they're said to be, since their faces have some masculine traits." The short-faced bear was once the most abundant bear in all of North America, until it went extinct around 11,000 BC. Some scientists argue that these massive bears delayed human migration into North America because they kept killing men trying to cross the Bering Strait. The Goo Lagoon. This is an underwater river in Mexico's Cenote Angelita. The different densities of the two waters cause them to form in layers. The black swallower is a deep-sea fish that can swallow animals more than 10 times its own mass, thanks to its expansive stomach. This 7-inch swallower was found dead after it swallowed and failed to digest a 34-inch mackerel. The harpy eagle is considered to be the largest and most powerful bird in the rainforest. Its rear talons can grow up to 4 inches long, about the same size as a grizzly bear's claws. It's certainly no mistake that this majestic bird is literally named after a mythological monster. This is what a baby swordfish looks like on someone's fingertip. This little guy will grow to be over 1,000 pounds one day. Calathris archeri, aka the Devil's Fingers, might look like a creature with tentacles upon first glance, but it's actually a fungus. It is also known as the octopus stinkhorn because it smells of rotting flesh. In its early stages, it looks like an alien emerging out of a pod, and many people have mistakenly reported it as such. It's estimated that about 300,000 years ago, 9 different species of human walked the earth. By 10,000 years ago, all of them had been wiped out due to the rise of a new species, Homo sapien. Baby owls have to sleep face down because their heads are too heavy to hold up. Gray Percheron horses are born black and slowly turn white. This is the same stallion over a 12-year span. The Dong Tao chicken, aka the dragon chicken, is an extremely rare breed that only exists in Dong Tao, Vietnam. Oysters produce pearls as a defense mechanism. When a parasite gets stuck in their bodies, they ease the pain by coating it in a substance called nacre. Layer upon layer of this fluid is deposited until a shiny pearl is formed. Weird Nature Facts, Part 21. The largest organism in the world is a giant mushroom in Oregon's Malheur National Forest. Its root system is the size of 1,500 football fields, and it might be as much as 8,000 years old. The Costa Rican glass frog has transparent skin, allowing you to see its organ structure. A bite from the Brazilian wandering spider can cause men to have an erection lasting longer than 4 hours. There have been no recorded fatal attacks of wild orcas on humans. In 2005, a 12-year-old boy in Alaska was bumped by a killer whale while splashing in 4 feet of water. The boy was likely mistaken for a seal, and the bump was an aborted attack once the whale realized its mistake. All 4 times that humans have been killed by orcas were in captivity. Weird Nature Facts, Part 4. Wildlife officials highly advise against feeding a wild moose. This is because if you feed a moose, it might become aggressive and attack the next person it encounters if they have no food to offer. The colors on a toucan's beak remain unchanged for many years after the bird's death. A little girl in Seattle became friends with a group of crows that she feeds in exchange for gifts. The items they bring her are typically shiny and have included pieces of glass, buttons, and even lost jewelry. This is one of the first cases of wild birds displaying gift-giving behavior to humans. Weird Nature Facts, Part 12. A man from South Africa adopted a hippo after it was rescued from a river. 5 years later, the hippo dragged him into the same river and mauled him to death. Armed with giant canine teeth, hippos kill more people each year than lions, elephants, leopards, buffalo, and rhinos combined. They can run at speeds up to 30 miles per hour despite weighing up to 4,000 pounds. So yeah, don't get a pet hippo. Point Nemo is officially known as the oceanic pole of inaccessibility, aka the point in the ocean that is farthest away from land. It is surrounded by more than 1,000 miles of ocean in every direction. At any given time, the closest humans to this point are most likely to be astronauts. Weird Nature Facts, Part 34. While it looks like something from Star Wars, the Valais blacknose is a species of domestic sheep found in Switzerland. They're known for their shaggy coats, spiral horns, and pitch black faces. A Russian helicopter discovered this strange giant crater in Siberian permafrost. Some scientists say it's a new type of sinkhole, but its true origins remain a mystery. There's a species of octopus that cares for her eggs for 53 months without eating, then dies. This is the longest brooding period of any known animal species. Farmers in Botswana have started painting faces on their cows' butts to prevent lions from sneaking up on them. The New Mexico whiptail is a species of lizard that is 100% female. Nicknamed the lesbian lizards, they still mate with each other to stimulate egg growth without transferring genetics. Weird Nature Facts, Part 44. The platypus has no nipples. Instead, milk simply oozes from the mother's skin. In 2019, scientists were baffled when a 36-foot humpback whale was found in the Amazon rainforest. While a few theories have been put forth, wildlife experts are still scratching their heads as to how it got there. This absolute unit of a mountain lion was captured on a trail cam in Alberta, Canada. Despite being the largest mammal in the history of the world, blue whales do not have large buttholes. Instead, they defecate with an anus the size of a grapefruit. When caterpillars go into their chrysalis, they turn into a soupy liquid. However, as a moth or a butterfly, they can still remember their life as a caterpillar. A calf with 3 eyes was recently born in Wales. The vet who took the picture said she'd never seen anything like it before. Weird Nature Facts, Part 24. Stepan the brown bear was found weak and alone in the woods when he was just 3 months old. But a Russian couple nursed him back to health, and now 25 years later, he still lives with them in their Moscow home. The couple says the 7-foot-tall bear loves people and has never shown signs of aggression. Temperatures get so cold in the winters in Finland that the frost and snow on the trees can make the landscape look like another planet. Both tanks in this photo are filled with water from the same source, but the tank on the right has oysters in it. A single adult oyster can filter as much as 50 gallons of water per day. Researchers have found that cockroach milk can be 4 times as nutritious as cow's milk. They claim that it's a superfood that can act as a fantastic supplement for protein. Scientists believe that it can help in feeding our growing population in the future. Weird Nature Facts, Part 7. This is a snapping turtle buried in mud just after emerging from hibernation. This is where the Native American legend of the earth being brought into existence and carried on the shell of a turtle originated from. Alligators have been a long-running problem for NASA, as there have been multiple incidents of alligators climbing over NASA's fences and entering buildings overnight. Dolphins can identify humans by checking our skeletal structure through their sonar. They have been known to help shipwreck victims fight off sharks and stay afloat, because as mammals, they understand the concept of drowning. Weird Nature Facts, Part 28. These giant stick insects known as tree lobsters were thought to be wiped out by rats in 1920. But in 2001, 24 of them were found in a small bush on an island called Ball's Pyramid. No one knows how they got there, but they were the last known survivors of the species until scientists started breeding them. 44 years ago today was the first and only time that snow was recorded in Miami, Florida. Sea urchins sometimes cover themselves with rocks for protection, so if you give them tiny hats, they'll wear them. In the 1930s, a flute player had a pet lyrebird that mimicked his music. Eventually, he released the bird into the wild, but fragments of the flute player's music were passed down by generations of lyrebirds and are still present in their songs today. Weird Nature Facts, Part 43. A man from Kerala, India set a Guinness World Record by putting 60,000 bees on his face for more than 4 hours. He says bees are his best friends and will only sting him if he treats them improperly. In order to tell whether a female is ready to mate, male giraffes will drink their urine. Sand tiger shark embryos fight to the death in their mother's womb and only the strongest survive. DNA testing revealed that this is due to embryos from different fathers competing to be born. Snails' teeth are the strongest known biological material on the planet. They're stronger than spider silk and can withstand pressure high enough to turn carbon into diamonds. According to a new study, fish eggs can survive and hatch after passing through a duck. This provides one explanation as to how completely isolated bodies of water can become stocked with fish. Weird Nature Facts, Part 13. The loudest sound ever heard on Earth was the eruption of Krakatoa in 1883. The explosion had a nuclear yield 13,000 times greater than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. It ruptured the eardrums of sailors 40 miles away, and people as far as 3,000 miles away reported hearing it as a distant roar of heavy guns. To put that into perspective, it would be like sitting in Boston and hearing a sound that came all the way from Ireland. It was one of the most destructive volcanic eruptions in history, since at least 35,000 people died and the global temperature was lowered by 2 degrees Fahrenheit for 5 years. Weird Nature Facts, Part 31. This incredible photo captures the moment an orangutan reached out to help a conservationist who was stuck in a river. It was taken in Malaysia when the man was searching for dangerous snakes in the area to protect the local apes. This extremely rare translucent lobster was caught in the state of Maine. The man who caught it said he threw it back into the ocean because it was too small. Experts say the chances of finding a lobster like this are about 1 in 100 million. Thousands have climbed Mount Everest and 12 men have visited the moon, but only 3 people have ever been to the deepest point in the ocean. While meerkats are adorable, they're also the most murderous species on the planet by far. They've been known to kill members of their own species more frequently than any other animal that's been studied. Weird Nature Facts, Part 10. A rare golden possum was found in Australia and named Pikachu for obvious reasons. Its golden yellow fur is the result of a genetic mutation that affects the possum's melanin production. This picture shows invasive coyotes meeting reintroduced wolves for the first time at Yellowstone National Park. In 1997, tree hugger Julia Hill started living in a 1,500-year-old California redwood tree to prevent loggers from cutting it down. She ended up staying there for a total of 738 days, and the tree still stands to this day. Weird Nature Facts, Part 39. Zookeepers in Argentina were quite shocked to find that Pelusa the polar bear had suddenly turned purple, but it turned out to simply be a reaction to the dermatitis medication she was taking, and she quickly became the biggest attraction at the zoo. Rainbow lattice sunstone is an extremely rare gemstone that occurs naturally. It can only be found in one tiny patch of desert in northern Australia. This chick was born with a genetic deformity that gave it 4 legs. If a flatworm's head is cut off, not only will it grow a new head and brain, but the new brain will contain all of the memories of the old brain. Sharks have survived 4 out of the 5 mass extinction events and have been around for more than 400 million years. This means they're older than Mount Everest, older than dinosaurs, and even older than trees. Weird Nature Facts, Part 36. A group of blue dogs was recently spotted in Russia near an abandoned chemical factory. It's believed they were exposed to chemicals used to make plexiglass, but doctors say they appear to be in good health. Despite its reputation for spiders, nobody has died from a confirmed spider bite in Australia since 1979. But many deaths have occurred due to people being surprised by them, such as while driving. When mating, flatworms engage in violent penis fencing to determine who will be the father. The winner who stabs the other with its pecker remains a male while the other becomes a female. Immediately after banging, a female praying mantis will rotate her head 180 degrees and eat the head of the male. Therefore, the male has an extra brain in its rear, so it can continue mating without a head. Weird Nature Facts, Part 16. In 2005, an Ethiopian girl was being brutally beaten by 7 men when a pride of lions chased them away. They even stayed with her until help arrived. Some experts say the lions might have spared the girl because her crying sounded like the meowing of lion cubs. Other experts suggest that they were just getting ready to eat her when authorities arrived. About 400 million years ago, before trees dominated the landscape, the earth was covered with giant mushrooms. In 1986, an Indian man set a world record by spending 72 hours in a cage with 72 of the world's most venomous snakes. He was seeking to spread awareness that snakes don't bite unless provoked. He came out of the cage unharmed without a single bite. Weird Nature Facts, Part 19. This manta ray caught off the coast of New Jersey in 1933 was one of the largest ever caught. It weighed over 5,000 pounds and had a wingspan more than 20 feet wide. Cats have contributed to the extinction of at least 63 global vertebrate species. They are often considered one of the most environmentally damaging invasive predators on the planet. In the ideal environment, 2 rats can turn into 482 million rats over a span of just 3 years. The orca whale who starred in Free Willy was released back into the wild in 2002 after being in captivity for 23 years. A few weeks after his release, he showed up at a Norwegian beach in hopes of seeking human contact. He would even give rides to children on his back. Weird Nature Facts, Part 33. Some species of tarantulas keep tiny frogs as pets. The frog is protected from predators, and in return, the tarantula's burrow is protected from pests that are too small for the spider to deal with. Cats were likely domesticated by humans through the same process. Farmers who own ostrich farms often struggle with breeding. This is because ostriches are sometimes more attracted to humans than other ostriches. Cheetahs are so closely related that you can freely transplant organs between each member of the species without immunosuppression. In 1970, Fraser the lion was adopted by a safari in Florida at the age of 18, which is the human equivalent to the age of 80. He was blind, toothless, and could barely walk, but was still responsible for the births of 35 cubs at the park. Weird Nature Facts, Part 2. If you were to swim near a pod of narwhals and happen to hear one whistle, it might be the last thing that you ever heard. The sounds that narwhals make are so loud that they're said to be deafening to humans. Visiting the island of Socotra in Yemen can seem like you're on another planet. More than 30% of the plant life on the island isn't found anywhere else on Earth. Villagers along the Niger River in Zimbabwe were losing cows and people at such an alarming rate that they had to call in the National Army. The culprit? A 22-foot, 2,500-pound monster crocodile. Weird Nature Facts, Part 5. This isn't what you think it is. This is the carnivorous pitcher plant from the genus Nepenthes. The top acts as a lid for the lower pitcher structure, which traps and drowns insects in a syrupy fluid. Real classy, Mother Nature. This is a bull born without the protein myostatin, allowing for unrestricted muscle growth. In 2010, there was a massive flood in Pakistan that forced millions of spiders to climb up trees and build webs to avoid the rising waters. People claim that if you happen to stand under any of these trees, hundreds of tiny little spiders would fall all over your body. Weird Nature Facts, Part 22. Coconut crabs have a great sense of smell and will travel in packs to find food. They'll eat virtually anything and are basically the raccoons of the Indo-Pacific Islands. A Kansas homeowner turned on his sprinklers before leaving to escape a wildfire. He returned to find his home completely intact while everything around it had burnt to the ground. In the 1950s, a family from Texas had a pet lion named Blondie. They never had a single incident with her, and she died of old age as a beloved member of the family. A Colombian woman was raised by monkeys after being kidnapped and abandoned in the jungle as a child. She spent 5 years living with a colony of capuchin monkeys before being rescued by hunters. When she was found, she didn't know how to cooperate with other humans. Weird Nature Facts, Part 46. Found in Sri Lanka, this male adult elephant was the first scientific record of dwarfism in the wild. He measures at just over 5 feet in height. Believe it or not, but crocodiles are more closely related to birds than they are to lizards. The Zolo is an ancient Aztec dog breed native to Mexico. They were once considered to be guide dogs for dead people entering the underworld. This giant rock in Finland has been resting perfectly on a curved surface for over 8,000 years. Sperm whales are the largest toothed predator on the planet but lack teeth in their upper jaw. Instead, they have tooth pockets that encompass the teeth of their lower jaw. The assassin bug wears the corpses of its prey like a backpack. After stabbing its prey and slurping out the innards, the insect uses the corpses as armor and camouflage. Weird nature facts, part 25. Dolphins love interacting with pregnant women because they communicate using ultrasound. Not only can they hear the mother's heartbeat, but also the baby's, and they find this very fascinating. For more than 20 years, a dolphin named Pylorus Jack regularly guided ships through treacherous waters until his disappearance in 1912. A man from Argentina posted this photo of a giant mosquito called a galley nipper that his mother killed in her home. While its bite can be very painful, it's not nearly as dangerous as the smaller mosquito, which can transmit yellow fever and Zika virus. Naka Cave in Thailand closely resembles a giant petrified snake. The average silverback gorilla is 4 to 9 times stronger than the average human male. They can deadlift 1,800 pounds and their grip can crush the skull of a crocodile. Weird nature facts, part 8. This is why you should never touch a tree branch in Australia. The wraparound spider can flatten and wrap its body around tree limbs for perfect camouflage. The same whale was found and photographed after 35 years off the western coast of Mexico. The Atlas moth scares off predators by imitating the appearance and behavior of a snake. The moth will often fall to the ground when threatened and flap around to look like a writhing cobra. Weird nature facts, part 42. In September of 2001, thousands of residents reported blood rain falling over the state of Kerala, India. While there are many theories including extraterrestrial origins, scientists are still not certain as to where it came from. Last year, the world's only known pink manta ray was found in the Great Barrier Reef. The diver was so amazed at first that he thought his camera was broken. In 2016, a swarm of 20,000 bees chased a car for 2 days because their queen got stuck inside. Avocados never ripen on the tree, so farmers can use trees as storage and keep avocados fresh for up to 7 months. Shrek the sheep ran away from his owner in 1998 to avoid being sheared. 6 years later, he was found living in a cave with enough wool to produce 20 men's suits. Weird nature facts, part 11. This is an incredible photo of an orangutan using a spear-like item to catch fish. According to many scientists, orangutans are entering their own stone age, meaning they're beginning to discover the use of basic tools. The vision of the pronghorn antelope is comparable to a human wearing wide-angle 10 times power binoculars. In other words, on a clear night, they can see the rings of Saturn. The great patu is an extremely rare tree-dwelling bird from tropical America. The bird is known for its eerie nocturnal cries and its stump-like appearance, making it a spooky master of disguise. Not to mention, it looks like an alien bird. Weird nature facts, part 29. Archaeologists have discovered dwarf crocodiles living in remote caves in the African country of Gabon. After living in complete darkness, their skin has turned orange and they are nearly blind. These weird cave crocodiles may be in the process of evolving into an entirely new species. In the town of Churchill, Manitoba, it is deemed common courtesy to keep your car doors unlocked. This is so that townspeople can have a quick escape if they ever come across a wild polar bear. In 2007, a giant bowhead whale was caught off the coast of Alaska with an old harpoon point embedded in its neck. Further examination revealed that the fragment dated back to the year 1880, indicating that the whale had survived a human attack that took place over a century ago. This also proved to scientists that bowhead whales are the longest living mammals in the world. Weird nature facts, part 14. At his luxurious estate in Puerto Triunfo, Pablo Escobar put together a private zoo filled with giraffes, hippos, elephants, and other animals. Some of the animals, left abandoned upon Escobar's death, have since thrived and reproduced. It is now estimated that more than 60 hippos roam the surrounding areas, and have even become a local invasive species problem. When anglerfish mate, they melt into each other and share their bodies forever. The deep sea is so vast that when a male finds a female, he must latch on and fuse to her, losing his eyes and internal organs until the two fish share a bloodstream. Weird Nature Facts, Part 38. This is a photo of an alligator snapping turtle hibernating under a sheet of ice. Many turtles can survive this way by breathing in water through their butthole and diffusing the oxygen. Magnolia plants are so ancient that they're pollinated by beetles because they existed before bees even appeared. When eaten, the sarpa can cause severe hallucinations lasting up to 36 hours. During the Roman Empire, the fish was commonly used as a party drug. Many cows have best friends and can become very stressed when they're separated from each other. Due to fresh water being so scarce on the Galapagos Islands, some bird species have adapted by drinking the blood of other animals. If a female fox dies, her mate will stay single forever. But if a male fox dies, his widow will search for a new mate immediately. Weird Nature Facts, Part 32. In the 1930s, a couple of married scientists conducted an experiment in which a chimpanzee named Gua was raised alongside their infant son Donald. For 9 months, they were raised as brother and sister as the parents recorded their development. While Gua learned many of the human behaviors before Donald, the experiment was stopped abruptly because Donald started behaving more like a chimp. If you jangle your keys at a moth that has ears, it will do a backflip. This is an adaptation to the echolocation of bats, which is a high-pitched noise. The moth will drop out of the air and pretend that it's dead to avoid being eaten by a bat. The deep-water blobfish actually looks like a normal fish when it's in its natural habitat. It only looks ugly and bloated after undergoing extreme depressurization when fishermen try to reel it in. Weirdest Nature Facts, Parts 1 through 25. Villagers along the Niger River were losing cows and people at such an alarming rate that they had to call in the National Army. The culprit ended up being a 22-foot-long, 2,500-pound monster crocodile. If you were to swim near a pod of narwhals and happen to hear one whistle, it might be the last thing that you ever heard. The sounds that narwhals make are so loud that they're said to be deafening to humans. These are what the muscles look like on a fully grown male Siberian tiger. These are what the vestigial limbs of a beluga whale look like. When sailors first explored the Arctic waters, they understandably mistook beluga whales for real-life mermaids. The great patoo is an incredibly rare tree-dwelling bird from tropical America. The bird is known for its creepy nocturnal cries as well as the fact that it looks like an alien. Weird Nature Facts, Part 20. Horseshoe crabs have been around for 450 million years and have blue blood. Instead of hemoglobin, their blood contains hemocyanin, which gets its blue color from oxygenated copper. Their blood is so valuable to the medical industry that a gallon costs around $60,000. The sting of the tarantula hawk wasp is so unbearable that victims are often advised to lie down and start screaming to avoid further injury. In 2018, Russian scientists collected and analyzed 300 prehistoric worms from Arctic permafrost. After being thawed, 2 of the worms began to move and eat. Both of the worms are estimated to be well over 30,000 years old. Weird Nature Facts, Part 17. Photographer Atif Saeed nearly got himself killed in order to capture this photo, which was taken just moments before the lion tried to attack him. He drove up to the lion, sat on the ground next to his car, and left the door open. The door being left open was the only reason he was able to escape unharmed. In case anyone is wondering what happened to the dinosaurs, here's what a baby blue heron looks like. The Bajau people of Southeast Asia are considered sea nomads. They have no homes, money, or nationalities, and they spend 60% of their time underwater. They can go spearfishing at depths greater than 200 feet without scuba gear or oxygen tanks. They've even developed much larger spleens than the average human thanks to evolution. Weird Nature Facts, Part 35. There's an area in Venezuela where lightning strikes 280 times per hour, 160 nights per year. It's called Relámpago del Catatumbo, aka the Everlasting Storm. The Indo-Hyas was a deer-like land mammal that was about the size of a raccoon. It's also the earliest known ancestor of the whale. This is how koalas are weighed, and it might just be the most adorable thing ever. While grizzly bears are large and terrifying, their size doesn't even compare to a polar bear's. When the sun is directly overhead, the landscape looks like a bad rendering of a video game. It's known as the subsolar point. A woman from Australia was awarded by PETA after rehabilitating a huntsman spider that only had 2 of its legs left. She fed it water and small cockroaches for a month until it grew all of its legs back. Weird Nature Facts, Part 3. These are what the vestigial limbs of a beluga whale look like. When sailors first explored the Arctic waters, they understandably mistook beluga whales for real-life mermaids. These are what the muscles look like on a fully grown male Siberian tiger. This rare orchid, known as the flower of the Holy Spirit, only blooms once per year. It looks like a group of praying saints before blooming, but once it blooms, it turns into a flying dove. Weird Nature Facts, Part 23. In 1986, a 5-year-old boy fell into a gorilla enclosure at the Jersey Zoo and lost consciousness. But a male gorilla named Jumbo stood between the boy and the other gorillas in a protective gesture. He even stroked the boy's back to comfort him until he was rescued. This incident helped create a positive public perception of gorillas. Costing $39 million per gallon, scorpion venom is the most expensive liquid in the world. A species of wild mountain goat called the picardo went extinct in the year 2000, but cells from the last animal were frozen in liquid nitrogen and scientists were able to clone it. This made the picardo the first species of animal to become de-extinct. Sadly, the clone died only 7 minutes after being born, also making it the only species to go extinct twice. Weird Nature Facts, Part 33. Some species of tarantulas keep tiny frogs as pets. The frog is protected from predators, and in return, the tarantula's burrow is protected from pests that are too small for the spider to deal with. Cats were likely domesticated by humans through the same process. Farmers who own ostrich farms often struggle with breeding. This is because ostriches are sometimes more attracted to humans than other ostriches. Cheetahs are so closely related that you can freely transplant organs between each member of the species without immunosuppression. In 1970, Fraser the lion was adopted by a safari in Florida at the age of 18, which is the human equivalent to the age of 80. He was blind, toothless, and could barely walk, but was still responsible for the births of 35 cubs at the park. Weird Nature Facts, Part 37. In proportion to body weight, koalas have one of the smallest brains of any mammal. They're so dumb that when presented with leaves on a flat surface instead of on branches, they are unable to recognize them as food and will not eat them. Dogs get sprayed by skunks so often because skunks raise their tails as a warning. Dogs see this as "come smell my butt," which is the exact opposite message of what the skunk is trying to send. In Germany, it is illegal to kill any vertebrate animal without proper reason. Because of this, all German animal shelters are no-kill. In the 1980s, Ken the orangutan escaped from his enclosure at the San Diego Zoo multiple times. His apparent goals were visiting other animals, taking photos with tourists, and throwing rocks at his orangutan rival. Weird Nature Facts, Part 45. It's estimated that about 300,000 years ago, 9 different species of human walked the earth. By 10,000 years ago, all of them had been wiped out due to the rise of a new species, Homo sapien. Baby owls have to sleep face down because their heads are too heavy to hold up. Great Percheron horses are born black and slowly turn white. This is the same stallion over a 12-year span. The Dong Tao chicken, aka the dragon chicken, is an extremely rare breed that only exists in Dong Tao, Vietnam. Oysters produce pearls as a defense mechanism. When a parasite gets stuck in their bodies, they ease the pain by coating it in a substance called nacre. Layer upon layer of this fluid is deposited until a shiny pearl is formed. Weird Nature Facts, Part 41. Scientists believe that a function of zebra stripes is to deter insects. So researchers painted stripes on several cows and discovered that it reduced the number of bug bites by more than 50%. The Costa Rican glass frog has transparent skin, enabling you to see its entire organ structure. Dragonflies are nature's deadliest predators when it comes to catching prey. They catch more than 95% of the prey they target, making them 4 times as successful as the king of the jungle. Octopus truly are nature's aliens. They have 3 hearts, 9 brains, and blue blood. Koalas sleep for 22 hours a day. The rest of their time is spent eating and wandering around aimlessly looking for a mate. When they don't find one, they give up and go back to sleep without a care in the world. Weird nature facts, part 38. This is a photo of an alligator snapping turtle hibernating under a sheet of ice. Many turtles can survive this way by breathing in water through their butthole and diffusing the oxygen. Magnolia plants are so ancient that they're pollinated by beetles because they existed before bees even appeared. When eaten, the sarpasalpa can cause severe hallucinations lasting up to 36 hours. During the Roman Empire, the fish was commonly used as a party drug. Many cows have best friends and can become very stressed when they're separated from each other. Due to fresh water being so scarce on the Galapagos Islands, some bird species have adapted by drinking the blood of other animals. If a female fox dies, her mate will stay single forever. But if a male fox dies, his widow will search for a new mate immediately. Weird nature facts, part 35. There's an area in Venezuela where lightning strikes 280 times per hour, 160 nights per year. It's called Relámpago del Catatumbo, aka the Everlasting Storm. The Indo-Hyas was a deer-like land mammal that was about the size of a raccoon. It's also the earliest known ancestor of the whale. This is how koalas are weighed, and it might just be the most adorable thing ever. While grizzly bears are large and terrifying, their size doesn't even compare to a polar bear's. When the sun is directly overhead, the landscape looks like a bad rendering of a video game. It's known as the subsolar point. A woman from Australia was awarded by PETA after rehabilitating a huntsman spider that only had 2 of its legs left. She fed it water and small cockroaches for a month until it grew all of its legs back. Weird nature facts, part 46. Found in Sri Lanka, this male adult elephant was the first scientific record of dwarfism in the wild. He measures at just over 5 feet in height. Believe it or not, but crocodiles are more closely related to birds than they are to lizards. The Zolo is an ancient Aztec dog breed native to Mexico. They were once considered to be guide dogs for dead people entering the underworld. This giant rock in Finland has been resting perfectly on a curved surface for over 8,000 years. Sperm whales are the largest toothed predator on the planet but lack teeth in their upper jaw. Instead, they have tooth pockets that encompass the teeth of their lower jaw. The assassin bug wears the corpses of its prey like a backpack. After stabbing its prey and slurping out the innards, the insect uses the corpses as armor and camouflage. Weird nature facts, part 36. A group of blue dogs was recently spotted in Russia near an abandoned chemical factory. It's believed they were exposed to chemicals used to make plexiglass, but doctors say they appear to be in good health. Despite its reputation for spiders, nobody has died from a confirmed spider bite in Australia since 1979. But many deaths have occurred due to people being surprised by them, such as while driving. When mating, flatworms engage in violent penis fencing to determine who will be the father. The winner who stabs the other with its pecker remains a male while the other becomes a female. Immediately after banging, a female praying mantis will rotate her head 180 degrees and eat the head of the male. Therefore, the male has an extra brain in its rear, so it can continue mating without a head. Weird nature facts, part 43. A man from Kerala, India set a Guinness World Record by putting 60,000 bees on his face for more than 4 hours. He says bees are his best friends and will only sting him if he treats them improperly. In order to tell whether a female is ready to mate, male giraffes will drink their urine. Sand tiger shark embryos fight to the death in their mother's womb and only the strongest survive. DNA testing revealed that this is due to embryos from different fathers competing to be born. Snails' teeth are the strongest known biological material on the planet. They're stronger than spider silk and can withstand pressure high enough to turn carbon into diamonds. According to a new study, fish eggs can survive and hatch after passing through a duck. This provides one explanation as to how completely isolated bodies of water can become stocked with fish. Weird nature facts, part 34. While it looks like something from Star Wars, the Valais blacknose is a species of domestic sheep found in Switzerland. They're known for their shaggy coats, spiral horns, and pitch black faces. A Russian helicopter discovered this strange giant crater in Siberian permafrost. Some scientists say it's a new type of sinkhole, but its true origins remain a mystery. There's a species of octopus that cares for her eggs for 53 months without eating, then dies. This is the longest brooding period of any known animal species. Farmers in Botswana have started painting faces on their cows' butts to prevent lions from sneaking up on them. The New Mexico whiptail is a species of lizard that is 100% female. Nicknamed the lesbian lizards, they still mate with each other to stimulate egg growth without transferring genetics. Weird Nature Facts, Part 39. Zookeepers in Argentina were quite shocked to find that Pelusa the polar bear had suddenly turned purple, but it turned out to simply be a reaction to the dermatitis medication she was taking, and she quickly became the biggest attraction at the zoo. Rainbow lattice sunstone is an extremely rare gemstone that occurs naturally. It can only be found in one tiny patch of desert in northern Australia. This chick was born with a genetic deformity that gave it 4 legs. If a flatworm's head is cut off, not only will it grow a new head and brain, but the new brain will contain all of the memories of the old brain. Sharks have survived 4 out of the 5 mass extinction events and have been around for more than 400 million years. This means they're older than Mount Everest, older than dinosaurs, and even older than trees. Weird Nature Facts, Part 42. In September of 2001, thousands of residents reported blood rain falling over the state of Kerala, India. While there are many theories including extraterrestrial origins, scientists are still not certain as to where it came from. Last year, the world's only known pink manta ray was found in the Great Barrier Reef. The diver was so amazed at first that he thought his camera was broken. In 2016, a swarm of 20,000 bees chased a car for 2 days because their queen got stuck inside. Avocados never ripen on the tree, so farmers can use trees as storage and keep avocados fresh for up to 7 months. Shrek the sheep ran away from his owner in 1998 to avoid being sheared. 6 years later, he was found living in a cave with enough wool to produce 20 men's suits. Weird Nature Facts, Part 44. The platypus has no nipples. Instead, milk simply oozes from the mother's skin. In 2019, scientists were baffled when a 36-foot humpback whale was found in the Amazon rainforest. While a few theories have been put forth, wildlife experts are still scratching their heads as to how it got there. This absolute unit of a mountain lion was captured on a trail cam in Alberta, Canada. Despite being the largest mammal in the history of the world, blue whales do not have large buttholes. Instead, they defecate with an anus the size of a grapefruit. When caterpillars go into their chrysalis, they turn into a soupy liquid. However, as a moth or a butterfly, they can still remember their life as a caterpillar. A calf with 3 eyes was recently born in Wales. The vet who took the picture said she'd never seen anything like it before.